Right, hi everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so if any issues, technically let me know straight away because I haven't done these in probably 2 years now. So forgive the mess. I'm in the middle of redoing part of my flat. But here we are, 11th edition's finally here. The core rules are available for free, which is fantastic. And we're going to go through these now and basically check out what. So the good thing is they're available for free. Check out Warhammer Community's website. They're in a PDF. It will obviously come to the app as well, but do expect there'll be a few more weeks. So we'll go through it. It's going to be probably quite a long video, quite a long live stream, checking out what's been released. I'll do my best to sort of review things from an Astra Militarum point of view. Definitely, we can expect a fair few things will impact Guard, but obviously I won't be able to pick at everything. So do remember that we're just seeing one small but important part of the overall universe of the rule set. So this is the core rules. Everything builds on that. But until we see the full mission pack, the indexes, the points, everything else that wraps itself around the 40k core rules, we're not going to have a good understanding of how truly the game is going to be played. And a lot of jokes obviously out there. The first 3 to 6 months will be the Wild West because people will find broken combinations, interfaces between different units, missions, rules, you name it, that won't work or will be too aggressive. And then obviously it'll take a bit of time before GW can sort of smooth it out. So the one positive is in the year 2026, the world is ever more connected than ever was before. So praised by the Omnisci data is everywhere. So that means GW had to respond quite quickly. So if you go to a big tournament in 3 or 4 months, and I know UKTC have announced that in the UK, they'll be playing 11th edition quite soon. So definitely they're going to be getting good data in on how it's all going. So let's look at the core rules. We're going to go blow by blow. Again, this may take a while, but please stick with me. Any issues or challenges or questions or comments, put in the chat as always. So let's check out what the actual rule pack has got. So one observation that's been made by a few people is that it's actually quite well laid out. So definitely getting more organized. And that is both obviously the PDF and when it comes to the Battlefield app as well, the 40k app rather, it's going to be a lot more organized. So here you're going to have the basic rules, the battle rounds, which is important, battlefield and tactics, that's obviously impacts terrain and objectives, and what they're calling advanced rules. So as I said, this is basically the foundational aspect of the rule set, but then you ladder on top the mission packs, the indexes, the points, and that gives you the complete game in know and love. So let's get through this. I'm going to move through this at somewhat of a bit of a pace to keep us going because you're here for a while. So this document is roughly 90 pages. Of which probably, I'm guessing, probably 20 or 30 pages is fluff. So all these pretty pictures. But I think a key one to sort of talk about here, which has been teased a bit and definitely would have seen it in a lot of the rule previews, is the concept of when you muster an army, it impacts the missions you play. Now, that isn't brought to life in this document, but something to sort of keep in mind is that when you build an army, it's going to impact what objectives you play. So that's not in here in this document. It'll definitely come to life in other aspects. So we go all the way through this. Okay, so here there's not much to sort of talk about, but the key thing I've noticed is some clarification in language. So they say the active player and opposing player, and that is important as they describe certain parts of the rules as the active player. It's usually the person whose turn it is. They're the active player. The opposing player is the person who's not playing in that turn. Then they do have some exceptions that every time a unit is selected to move, that unit's controlling player is the active player. And likewise, if you're going to shoot or selected to fight, the unit's controlling player is the active player. So obviously that means if you have a surge move, if you have Overwatch, or if you're fighting in your opponent's turn, you are the active player for that activation. So unlike anything, this is good to clarify. And can you see Mr. Marlowe? Hello, Marlowe. Nice to see you, mate, for some bit of technical help. So this is definitely going to be an important clarification of language, is the active player and the opposing player. Right, now then it's on to distance. That's no difference. And this is a key thing, is that 40k hasn't changed fundamentally. You still use tape measures and dice. There's no blast templates like in 2nd or 3rd edition, and there's nothing else new fundamentally. But you still use dice, you still use D6, and you use tape measures. Now, they speak about leadership roles and battle shock roles. So leadership roles is new. I don't know where that's going to be actually impacting the game, but battle shock tests aren't new, but there's a crucial difference here now, which actually is brought to life later. But within this, it's no surprise. A leadership roll is 2d6, and you have to roll greater than the leadership characteristic of the unit. So for Astra Militarum, it's mostly higher than a 7, 7 or higher. So simply it's saying here, if you fail that, you're battle shocked. If you roll high, obviously you're not battle shocked. And if you are battle shocked, this is no different to what we've had in 10th, is that you get an objective control value of blank or 0. You can't use stratagems, and you can't perform actions. And now the clarification of action is also a new one from 9th, was gone in 10th. Now 11th is that's mostly going to be when you do secondary objectives. So again, if you're battle shocked, you've got no OC, you can't use stratagems, and you can't perform actions. Now actions is things like cleanse. They remove the terminology of actions in 10th, but they're bringing it back now, which is probably going to be things like doing cleanse or deploy teleport homers, that type of thing. Cool. Okay. Now they explain the data sheet. No change here that I can see, which is good. There's nothing like they've introduced something brand new like initiative from, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd edition, but everything is the same here. They've got all the keywords. Okay, unit composition, wet walkie options, and this is explaining how to read basically a data sheet, which is, again, no change. And broadly speaking, the data sheets are pretty easy to follow these days compared to early editions. They're quite straightforward. Now, moving units. Again, there's not much change here. However, there is an important thing when it comes to vehicles, as I've understood from other people looking at this, is that, okay, so every time you move a model, unless otherwise stated, it can move through friendly models. So Astra Militarum vehicles, according to this, until we get into more of it, can move through friendly models, including infantry and other vehicles as well. It can be moved through any space its base can fit through. So this appears to be, from what I can see, a clarification of if you've got a Bane blade with sponsons out the side, if the base of the model is the actual footprint, which actually is brought up later in a moment, if you can drive the footprint through the piece of terrain, but the sponsons clip it on the side, as long as you move through it and finish on the other side, that's okay. And that's my understanding at this point, until we get further into vehicle definitions. That seems to be the case here. So the good thing is you can move vehicles through friendly models. So at this point, we can understand it's moving through infantry and vehicles. And as I said, if your sponsons don't count for moving through terrain at this point, and that may be changed in a second as we get through this. Its base cannot be moved through enemy models. Its base cannot cross the edge of the battlefield. Okay, easy. And it's all stated while moving conditions must be met. Now, it then says you can basically move a straight line. I can move a straight line. And you can also now rotate at no cost. So obviously in 10th, you have to rotate 2 inches. You basically move, pivot, or rotate. Now you just basically move, and there's an illustration in a second to make this quite easy. Now, when you end a move, you must be in coherency. More on that later. You cannot be partway through a surface of a terrain feature, like a wall or a ceiling, they're saying. And all stated after moving conditions are met. Now, it's basically saying here, if you can't do that, you've got to go back to the start. But I imagine if you're trying to do something, you just pull it back a little bit till it fits. But okay, so no real difference here, except for, as I said, you can move through all models, and basically the base of a Lehman Russ or a Bane blade is what determines if you can drive through things. 2 gaps and say 2 terrain pieces, yeah? Okay, so here we've got, okay, moving in a straight line, okay. Now, this is less helpful because it's obviously just some round bases. So here you just obviously measure there, then measure there, no biggie. But with vehicles, you can clearly see now that you don't pay the pivot tax. You basically you'll move 4 inches there, pivot, and then move remaining 6 inches Lehman Russ battle tank. So not much change. Well, the change is you don't pay pivot tax, which is good. Okay, they now speak about setup. Again, this is nothing new, but again, it's sort of giving clarity into certain situations which will come to life in different rules, is that whenever you're set up, you're going to place them in coherency and unengaged, and that's it. So if you cannot set up all of the models in a unit, remove that unit from the battlefield, return its original position in strategic reserves or embarked within a transport. So fine. Now, coherency is new. We did see this in some of the other stuff they shared, is that now Okay, so you have to do both. Every model must be within 2 inches horizontally and 5 of at least one other model. Okay, so there's no mention of if you've got a big unit of 10 plus, which was 10th edition, you've got to be within 2 of 2 models. Now it's just be within 2 of another model. Yeah, so that's good, I guess. It makes it a bit easier. However, what's actually a massive change is you must be within 9 inches horizontally and 5 of every other model in that unit. So, okay, you could imagine you've got one guy at the front. As long as he's within 2 inches of somebody else, he's fine. However, you've now got to basically do an imaginary blob measurement that every single model in your 26-man Cadian Castellan brick is within 9 inches. Yeah, so you can't. There's no longer stringing out conga lines or doing massive big. I did once a 20-man Cadian Jungle Fighter conga line across the tabletop. Those days are gone. Clearly, this won't impact 10-man model units too much, but clearly big blobs like Orc Boys or Tyrion of Hormagaunts or Astra Militarum with a 20-man Deathcore brick or 26-man Cadian Castellan brick will be impacted. Likewise, will be Rough Riders have got big bases, so this is a restriction clearly, and yeah, this is going to make it. It shouldn't be that much of an issue, but because 9 inches obviously is quite a big diameter, but it is a limitation compared to the old days. Now, regaining coherency rather. This is no change. Is at the end of the turn. If one or more units on the battlefield is not within coherency, the units controlling player must remove models from them until they're coherent again. So basically kill off dudes to regain coherency. So no change there. Now engagement range is different. Crucially, it's 2 inches. Now, this means a friendly model is within engagement range of one or more enemy units. Those models in that unit are engaged, and if you're not, you're not. So engagement range will have impact, obviously, in the fight phase. It also has impact when you're moving models around the tabletop. And this will be brought to life probably somewhere else in the rule set. But the crucial thing here is that, obviously, when you're charged, if you're within 2 inches, if the model's within 2 inches, they can fight your unit, likewise yours, theirs. But do we think, likewise, if you're pushing out screens aggressively, and your opponent wants to move around you, if you just chucked out 10 jungle fighters to push back a rapid ingress or push back sort of aggressive movement, your opponent now has to be 2 inches outside of your 10-man brick of Cadian jungle fighters. So it's going to impact, obviously, significantly into the fight phase, but crucially also when you do your movement block plays, a 2-inch engagement range is obviously double what it used to be. So that's good when you chuck trash out to block stuff. Okay, here's a pretty diagram again. You can see coherency, no difference there, except of course it's got to be within 9 inches. So you can see this bloke or lady is by herself. As long as she's within 2 inches of her friend, she's fine, but she's going to be within 9 inches total footprint of the unit there. Okay, you can see engagement's obviously 2 inches, as we discussed there. Right, okay, weapons, attacks, and all that type of thing. Let's now look at this blow by blow. So from what I understand, this broadly all makes the same. There are some crucial things which are different, but okay. You've got to be visible, within range, and unengaged to shoot. Okay. While fighting, you've got to be engaged, and you cannot select more targets and weapons attack characteristics. Okay, no change. All right, resolve attacks. We blow this up a little bit. So resolve attacks is no change. Where it gets different, which you would have seen in other sort of rule leaks or announcements, is when it comes to save. So this, having read it briefly, is no change. Or your attacks and profiles at the same time. So you do the battle cannon, and then you do the las cannon, then you do both the multi-melters, or you can decide to sort of flip it around, I believe. So that's fine. Identical attacks here. Splitting melee attacks. Okay, hit rolls. This is no different than what it was. Again, they clarify in language like critical hits remain critical hits and critical wounds are sixes. That's fine. There's nothing here. Again, this is all the same. It's, your strength and your toughness comparison means what you have to roll. No change there. Okay, save rolls. This is different. And to be honest, I'm a bit baffled by this, but from what I've read, from what they've announced, is it's almost like they're basically following everyone was doing. So Right, so create groups. Okay, once you've done all your hits and your wound rolls, you've basically got 10 hits into a unit with, say, 5 dudes and a character. Let's see what we can do there. So you divide all models into that target, into the following groups. 1 group for each character model. Okay, I'm going to put 5 saves on my character model and 1 group on the other models which have got the same wound save and invulnerable save characteristics. That would be the 5 bodyguards, for example. You declare the order in which those groups will have attacks allocated to them, applying all of the following. If a non-character group contains a model that's lost 1 or more wounds, they must be allocated first. So if you've got 5 bodyguard dudes and they've taken a wound, let's pretend 6 Bulgrim and a Commissar. So 6 Bulgrim, one of them's taken a wound. You put the 5 wounds on that guy. Okay, fine. Now, no character group can be earlier allocation than the non-character groups. You have to do the Bulgrim first, then the Commissar, and then character groups containing a model that has lost 1 or more wounds must be earlier allocation or the character. Okay, right. So it looks basically the same as how everyone was doing it, but you basically have got to do the non-characters first, a character that has taken a wound, and a character as last just got a wound. So you basically say 5 of these saves are going to go into the Bulgrim. Don't know why you do that. The remaining 5 into the Commissar, for example. Now this, again, I don't think it's a clarification how it should have been. But having listened to sort of other channels speak about this, is that this is basically how people play it. Yeah. So you do, if you've got wounds on the Bulgrim, you do them first. If you've got a wounded character, you've got to do them as well. But it's up to you to decide where all the saves go. Yeah, so you've got 10 successful wound rolls. You put 10 wound rolls onto the Bulgrim and go from there. Okay, so that's a bit confusing for me, but it feels like it's the same. On inflict damage, okay, no change here. Invulnerable saves, fine. And this is basically clarifying for new players. If you roll higher than your saving throw with the AP adjustment, you save it. If you don't, you don't. But again, if you've played 40k for a while, get how this works. Okay, yes, fine. All right, let's get into the meaty stuff, because this again is all the very fundamental parts of Astra of playing 40k, and there's probably way more detail skipping over here to give you that clarity if you want to get into those meaty scenarios of working this out. All right, fine. Okay, geez, I've got a lot here. Allocation groups. Okay, so they clearly put a lot of thought into make this very clear, because again, if you've got like, we'll have to look at this in detail. If you've got a 26-man Cadian Castellan Brick with a Bulgrim bodyguard attached, I'm sure within all these pages you can make sense out of what to do there. Right, visibility, drawing line of sight. So no change. There's a 1-inch wide invisible line. You basically get your tape measure, put it on its side, and draw a line like that. That's a good way to always sort of pick those super tight angles, is just get your tape measure, put it on the side, draw it out like that. Okay, mortal wounds. So mortal wounds are no change. Basically, you allocate it the same, mortal wounds and damage. So this is where, if you do mortal wounds plus normal attacks, so potentially, I'm trying to think, maybe Not Dead Dog's headbutt or Commissar Graves on the charge. Now, it depends on the wording there, but this is basically saying that you resolve all the normal attacks, the mortal wounds go at the end. Yeah, so that's a crucial sort of timing difference, is that, again, you've got to check the wording on certain rules, but if you're doing normal attacks plus mortal wounds in the same activation, the mortal wounds come on last. Yeah, so that's a crucial timing thing. Now, hazard rolls, and this, I believe, is different, is to make a hazard roll for roll 1d6 on a 1 and 2, that roll fails and I suffer a mortal wound. Okay, or 3 mortal wounds if it's a monster or vehicle. If more than 1 hazard roll is required for the unit, make all of those rolls simultaneously. And that is everything they got there. So that is different, just making sure there's nothing following up there. That is new. So crucially, a 1 and a 2, you suffer a mortal wound. And there's no mention of characters here, because previously, I believe it was monster, vehicle, and characters who suffered 3 mortal wounds. Was it characters? I can't remember, actually. I can't remember. There was a thing about characters, and I can't remember now. But either way, what is definitely new is 1 and 2, you suffer a mortal wound. That's new. The vehicles still suffer 3 mortal wounds, and I'm pretty confident, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, Then in 10th edition, if you had a character, they suffer 3 mortal wounds as well. So your plasma pistol, your plasma gun, your plasma cannons. Okay, bad example, but all your infantry plasma weapons now will be killing dudes on 1s and 2s. So that is essentially a 50% increase. So that is new. That is new. So be aware of that one, excuse me. All right. Okay. Fully visible, blah, blah, blah. We'll get on to sort of terrain in a second, but this is fine. Okay, where are we up to? The battle round. So very confident this is no change either. So you start the battle round and you resolve rules that are triggered at the start of the round before progressing to the player's turn. Okay, no difference here. So that's going to be putting units in reserves if you've got Lord Solar, doing a scout moves, which have been adjusted, that type of thing. So before you roll off, you do all that malarkey. Okay, then you've got the player turns. I don't think anything's different here. Blah, blah, blah. End of the battle round. Now, rules that are triggered at the end of the battle round are resolved now in the following order. First resolve rules triggered at the point where other missions. I don't know any rules that trigger at the end of the battle round. That would probably be alluding to secondary objectives, maybe. But I don't know how this interacts with sort of most unit things. I haven't seen that yet. But again, it's clarity. It's always because I think what's important always with this type of thing is the more clarity you give people, the less ambiguity and weird discussions will be on the tabletop, which you can expect for at least 12 months of a new edition. So there probably is some stuff here they're tightening. Okay, now the turn itself. So start of the turn, command phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, fight phase, end of the turn. Okay, cool. So no psychic phase, nothing new like that has come in or come out. Good stuff. All right. So the command phase is firstly you gain a CP, no different. Both players gain a CP. And you now make your battle shock roll. So this is obviously different. You would have seen it out there on the internet. So one or both, the unit is currently battle shocked. So if you're battle shocked, you've got to reroll a battle shock. So you could be shocked again. So that's new, is if you are already battle shocked, roll a leadership test again. And if you fail it, you remain battle shocked, which is actually pretty big. It's a big difference compared to what it used to be. And that unit is at or below half strength. So if you're at half strength, you roll a battle shock now. So that is very new. Yeah, so clearly 10 jungle fighters, you used to lose 5. That was fine. As soon as you lose 5 now, you're rolling a battle shock. And if you fail the battle shock again in the following command phase, you can no longer hold an objective, perform actions, or use stratagems. So this is a big change. Definitely battle shock is going to be really felt a lot more. And clearly for Guard, that's going to be things like the Commissar's executional pistol ability, whatever it's called, is going to be helpful. Likewise, the regimental banners will become more helpful. And I'm sure they may change the wording in the index, but currently that means that if you've got a regimental banner, +1 leadership takes you off OC blank, which means you can still hold objectives, but you can't perform actions, nor can you use stratagems, because that all it's doing is giving you +1 OC. Yes, you go from blank to +1. So that's how I currently understand it. They may change that. But this is obviously a big change, is that battle shock, you have to retest until you pass it again. And that's going back to older editions where battle shock rolled on turn after turn. And again, it's just said, if you're at half, not below half, and or below half, you have to roll a battle shock test as well. So that is different. That's a big change. Okay, command abilities. Okay, fine. There'll be probably things like voice of command for Astra Militarum. Now, end of the command phase. Rules are triggered at end of the command phase are resolved now. And both players then consult the mission if one or more players have achieved this. But okay, so this again is a crucial one. Always remember, is you score your primary objective, your primary mission objective points, whatever you want to call them. God help me here. At the end of the command phase, yeah. So you obviously have to roll back. You gain a CP, roll your battle shock tests, issue your orders, then you score what primary objectives you hold. Yeah, so that's a crucial one. You resolve them now, which obviously means you've got to be battle shock first. And this is actually helpful because I believe what this is saying is you roll battle shock, then you can issue orders. That is what I believe this is saying, is that, okay, because then currently, as I understand it, is you issue your orders, and then you've got to roll battle shock, which means if you've given a unit an order and they become battle shocked, you can't use it. But this appears to basically say you will know what's battle shocked, then you give your orders, which is helpful because it means that you're not wasting orders. But on the flip side, when you're giving duty and honor, it does mean that you actually won't be able to influence until the next turn, the next round, if that makes sense. Because if you've got 10 jungle fighters and you give them duty and honor in your command phase, you're assuming they probably take casualties. Next, your opponent's turn, and they will have +1 OC leadership in the next round. But again, things like inspired command or whatever the one in the Grizzled Company stratagem, we can give orders at the beginning of any turn, will become more and more helpful, yeah. But that's my understanding here. So you do battle shock, then you give your orders, yeah, because this is a command ability. So that is a helpful, because you know what is battle shocked. Massive thanks to, I can't pronounce, Clove Canimix. So I'll give you a massive thank, €2. Thanks so much, mate. It's lovely to see you. So keep it up, much appreciated. But yeah, this for me seems to be a key one, is you basically take a battle shock, then you issue orders, which again is helpful because you're not going to waste your orders. But likewise, your orders, you won't be able to do that. So cool. Okay. Yeah, and thanks, Clove. This is the first one in ages. Yeah, I haven't done this in ages, so I haven't done the announcement, that type of thing. So forgive me. But let's keep going. So battle shock, no. As we said, the battle shock is obviously going to be felt a lot more. And then again, obviously things which could cause battle shock, like Tyranids, or what are the scary Space Marines with the fangs, the blue guys, the Night Lords, who can force battle shock, is going to be more powerful. And don't forget, Guard have got some weird little niche ones, like I think in Recon, the Recon detachment, you've got gas grenades enhancement, you can force battle shocks. And likewise also the artillery teams, the Krieg artillery teams, when they force battle shock. And that currently, actually that's a big one on battle shock, is that, yeah, currently with the artillery teams, is you force battle shock in 10th. If they fail battle shock, sure, they can't use a stratagem, but then as they move into their turn, they become unbattle shock. That's no longer the case. So that basically means, yeah, artillery teams actually have more impact now, because if you can force a battle shock, they will remain battle shocked. Yeah, and this, the thing is that, okay, so they'll be battle shocked in your turn, you go to your opponent's turn, then they've got to do the battle shock test again. So they can obviously pass it if they've got a high enough leadership, or low enough leadership. But this is still basically going to mean you've got a better potential of impact in the overall course of the game with artillery team units who force battle shock. So that's definitely a good one. Okay, what's all this? Oh, can't miss this. Okay, so the movement phase, right? So this is no different, I believe. So you move stuff, move. Okay, this is all the same, I believe. So remain stationary. That is fine. This all looks to be fine. End of movement phase. Rules that trigger the end of movement phase are resolved now. And for example, Overwatch, I believe, is done at the end of the movement phase now. That we'll come to that in a second. So that's no different. But okay, so again, this is always very helpful. I believe it's just stating what we already know. But again, giving all this clarity means that for weird rule interactions, you can always go to a good source to get back to the core rules to understand what's going down. So remain stationary is the key one. So no models are moved, either a straight line or rotated, until that remain stationary. Do not trigger any rules. Start or end to move units that remain stationary. Okay, fine. That looks like, okay, so if you want to remain stationary, you can't move or pivot or rotate. Fine. Okay, everything else looks to be the same. Yeah, no different. If you want to advance, you must be unengaged, and you can't charge, of course, unless you've got specific rules. Now, with falling back, they've introduced more language, again, to clarify that, is that before moving, select a fallback mode. Ordered retreat, if your unit is not battle shocked, you can select this mode. Desperate escape. You must select this mode. otherwise, yeah, okay. So if you're battle shocked, you do an ordered retreat. If you are battle shocked, you do a desperate escape, which is good. Okay, so whilst moving, desperate escape, each model that is moved can be moved through enemy models. So this is no different, but it's clarifying again, if you're battle shocked, you do a desperate escape. Okay, after moving, your unit must be unengaged until the end of the turn. Last one, you cannot declare shoot. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, desperate escape. Okay. Okay, so this is no change. Again, if you've got specific rules, allows you to fall back and shoot and charge, whatever, you can do that. This is saying, okay, so if your unit wasn't battle shocked, you must take a battle shock test. Right, so, okay, so this is helpful, is that, okay, so if you're not battle shocked, you fall back normally. However, if you fall back through enemy units, you've then got to also do a battle shock, yeah? So after moving, a desperate escape. Yeah, so a desperate escape allows you to move through enemy models. So you can be unbattle shocked, move through enemy units, and once you get out of the way, you then must do a battle shock roll for that unit, yeah? Okay, so that's helpful. That's good clarity. If you are battle shocked, you can fall back, but if you move through enemy units, you have to, you can do that as well. Okay, so that's helpful. Yeah, okay, fine. Right, let's see what else there is on fallback. Because wasn't there at the moment, you could, I think it's only that's mostly transport I'm thinking of, but okay, so this is helpful. So again, if you're not battle shocked, you can fall back normally. You can move through enemy units or models to do so, and obviously got to finish outside engagement range, which is actually 2 inches, which is quite big now, but then you must do a battle shock test. So that is new, I think. That's definitely new. And that clearly means that if you've got some dudes in combat with something, give them an order, I don't know, you give them a save, or you give them +1 OC or something, and if they move out of engagement, if they fall back through enemy units and models, if you fail the battle shock, an order will come off them. So that is good to know. This is good. That I'm glad I'm reading all this, actually. Right. Okay. All good, Clove. So, right. Okay, good. You got it. Yeah, it is confusing. And trust me, I'm not a rules lawyer. I suck at rules, but I think I've got it. Yeah, I've definitely got it. Is that you can move through enemy units, but if you do so, you have to do a battle shock test once you've moved through them. Yeah, so that's helpful. Okay. All right. Shooting. Okay, no change here. There is some new language. So you've got normal shooting, assault shooting, close quarters shooting, and indirect shooting. So close quarters shooting is a new one. And there is also, I'm sure everyone's seen, artillery is dead. Let's see if indirect is dead. We'll certainly find out in a second. But normal shooting is no different. So it's stating here, if you shoot, you're not eligible to start an action. Okay, fine. Now, we have seen, obviously, for the rule announcements they've made, some units can, some in detachments, some units can still shoot and do actions. So that's going to be somewhat more helpful for certain armies. Then you've got assault weapons. So all of the following apply to you. You must be unengaged and made an advance move this turn. You've got assault weapons. Okay, fine. And if you do that, you can't do an action either. Okay, fine. All right. Close quarters shooting. So this is new. So all of the following apply to your unit. Okay, engaged and did not make an advance move this turn. So you're engaged and you didn't make an advance move this turn. I don't know how you'd be engaged. Anyway, that first line confuses me. Okay, has one or more close combat weapons or is a monster or a vehicle. Fine. Okay. So this is almost like a combination of the pistol old rule and big guns never tie, but we'll see where we get to. So big guns never tie was a rule from 9th and 10th. Okay, so you make your attack. So while shooting, models in your units can target enemy units with a unit that's engaged with you. Okay, so if you're a monster or a vehicle, each time a monster or vehicle model makes an attack, unless the attack is with a close quarters weapon and target an enemy that unit you're engaged with, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Okay, fine. So Liminalized Battle Tank, it doesn't have close quarter weapons, I don't believe. So it's got its heavy bolters on the side, its las cannon, and its Vanquisher battle cannon laser cannon at the top, the big, massive big cannon. You are still -1 to hit. Also, if you've got a blast weapon, you can't shoot an engagement range. Okay, that's no different. So far, this is no different to what we know. Yeah, you can't shoot blast weapons if you're engagement range with someone, and you're -1 to hit if you're shooting something you're engaged with. Yeah, so this actually, I think, unless we see something different in a second, is that, okay, so unless it is made classical, and targets a unit your unit is engaged with, you subtract. So from what I can see here, for vehicles, what this is saying is that if you're in combat with your Limit Rust battle tank and you shoot into something you're not in combat with, I don't believe you're -1 to hit into them. This may be somewhere else, but from what I can see at the moment, this is, again, for vehicles, you can't shoot blast weapons into units you're in combat with, but you could shoot your blast weapon outside of combat, which you can do at the moment anyway. But from what I can read here, you're not -1 to hit if you're shooting something else that isn't in combat with that unit, yeah? So unless that attack is made with a close. Okay, so that's what I understand at the moment. We'll see if anything else comes to life in the document. All right, so for everything else now, you can select only close quarter weapons to make an attack with, and select units you're engaged with. Okay, so that is fundamentally your pistol rules. So all your las pistols, hotshot las pistols, and plasma pistols, you can shoot them in close quarter combat with no minus to hit. So basically, pistols remain the same, but it looks like big guns never tire has been reworded and addressed in a different way, which is you're still -1 to hit into stuff you're in combat with. You can't shoot blast, but if you shoot outside of combat to someone else that not engagement range with another one of your units, you're not -1 to hit. So that's all we can see at the moment. So let's see if it's spelled a different way somewhere else. Okay, indirect. All right, here we go. So you have to do all of the following. So you've got to be unengaged, and you don't make an advanced move this turn. Okay, fine. You've got indirect weapon, tick. All right, so while shooting, indirect weapons in your unit can target units that are not visible to the attacker. Okay, fine. All right, so each time an indirect weapon makes an attack, okay, the target has the benefits of cover against that attack. Right, so what, this is not different, but what this is subtly different is that, from what I can read so far, is if you shoot a basilisk at something it can see, because the main cannon is an indirect weapon, they still get the benefit of cover. Okay, so that seems to be already a bit of a change there, is that an indirect weapon will always be giving your target the benefit of cover. So that is new. Now, what also is new is you can't reroll the hit roll. So that's a big change, which means clearly Grizzled Company or Bridgehead Strike Force for infantry artillery teams, you can no longer reroll ones. So that is big. Now, unmodified hit roll of 1 to 5 fails unless your unit remains stationary and the target is visible to 1 or more units, in which case an unmodified hit roll of 1 to 3 fails instead. So this is, again, this is obviously another adjustment, a significant adjustment, is that if no one in your unit can see, in your army can see the unit, you're hitting on 6s with no rerolls. And they've got the benefits of cover. The benefits of cover is no change. But this means unless someone can see it, and remember, visibility is not measured by distance, it's just can you draw, could it be a Valkyrie, an Arvis strike fighter, or a Scout Sentinel being pushed up aggressively? As long as you can see the unit, you could be hitting on 4, 5s, and 6. But if no one in your army can see that unit, you're hitting on 6s with no reroll. So this is a definite nerf for indirect. We can expect to see an adjustment in points for indirect. This is obviously going to affect everything in the game. So I'm just thinking, back when you had Space Marines with the Nerf guns, the Vanga shooters, whatever they were, the silly little block shooting guns, they got 4 rerolls to hit with Oath of Moment. They no longer get that. So indirect certainly has been cut. There's still ways to make it work. And I think that's a good rule, is the idea that, you can still be hitting somewhat accurately if you've got guys of a spotter with a binocular and a radio calling in the fighter with just fire. This definitely is a big impact on indirect. That cannot be understated. Let's just check. Okay, so I got a comment. So let's say I have a 2-man. The Krieger can only shoot a tower, but -1 hits. I have 2 10-man, 1 cannons, 1 Krieger. engage. Okay, so you're asking about basically infantry. So I believe, let's say I have 2 10-man, 1 Cadian, so there's Krieg, engage of close with Tau, the Krieg. Okay, so no. So this is basically saying that monsters and vehicles can shoot if they're in combat. Yeah, they can always shoot if they're in combat. They can shoot at what they're in combat with, or shoot something outside of combat they're not in combat with, because obviously tanks can, with their turret, can point at a unit over there and shoot them. Now, non-monsters and vehicles can only shoot if they've got close quarter weapons. Yeah, so if you've got a pistol, you can shoot into combat with the unit that has engaged you. Yeah, so you've got 10 Death Corps of Krieg charged by some Tau dudes. The Tau guys have gone into combat with you. Your sergeant can shoot his plasma pistol, but no one else can shoot. There are stratagems that allow you to do some of that stuff, but no, it's basically monsters and vehicles can shoot when they're in combat, but non-monsters and vehicles, which is our 10 Kriegsmen, they can't shoot unless they've got a pistol, aka a close quarter weapon. Yeah, okay, let's see what else. Okay, I'll come back to the rest of the stuff you put here, 150 points. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to the other one in a second, yeah. All right, so that's the new stuff there. Close quarter shooting is almost like a rehash of a pistol rule, and big guns never tire, which is a previous rule. And indirect shooting has been fundamentally pretty heavily nerfed. Let's be open about that. All right, now the charge phase. Now, I'm not a connoisseur of the charge phase. I do my best to pretend to be knowing what I'm doing, but I just basically roll dice and have fun. However, I know there is some changes here which are worth talking about. So I may skim over some of the detail because I'm not a charge connoisseur. Let's do our best here. So, okay, the active player resolves charges with their eligible units one at a time, using the sequence below until all the units have charged and declared a charge and the charge has been resolved. Okay, so if you're the active player, it's your turn, you roll the charge rolls. Okay, so declare a charge. Select one friendly unit that's not declared a charge, and it's eligible to charge. See below. So to be eligible to charge, you've got to be on the battlefield, okay, unless otherwise stated, okay. Here are some rules that prevent you from not being able to declare a charge. So you've got to be within 12 inches of one or more enemy units. Now, we'll have to see, because some units have got bonuses to charge, like +1 to charge, +2 to charge. I don't know how that impacts that. Doesn't impact Astra Militarum, but there are some super speedy melee units which have got +1 to charge. So I don't know how that interacts with that. So if you're engaged, you can't charge out of combat with someone else into other combat that I know of. And if you've made an advance or fallback move this turn. So of course, some units can advance and charge, and some units can fall back and charge, such as Rough Riders, for example. Now you make the charge roll 2d6, no change. Okay, so attempt charge. If possible, make a charge move. And if you still want to, make a charge move with that unit. Otherwise, your unit does not make a charge move. It indicates the charge is then resolved. So this is new-ish. If it is possible to make a charge move and you still want to, make a charge move with that unit. Okay, so if possible, otherwise, the unit does not make a charge move. So this is where, and I'm sure you've probably seen out on the internet with all the announcements, is that now you can just basically go for the long bomb charges. What I mean by that is, what this is fundamentally addressing is, if you've got a 12-inch charge and you are stuck in the open, yeah, you've got a set of dudes who've got to make a 12-inch charge somewhere else, but then you've got to a big juicy target, but you've got some other dudes who you don't care as much about, but they're 3 inches away, for example. You now basically roll a 2d6, and whatever you roll, it basically allows you to go to both, yeah? So at the moment, you've got to say, I want to go for that 12-inch charge, which is mad, but I'll do it. So you roll your dice, you fail your charge, you can't obviously make the charge. However, now you can basically roll the 2d6. If you roll 3 inches or 4 inches, you go into the target which is closer. So this obviously gives a lot more flexibility to what you do in the charge phase. It means that you can basically go for the shorter charge or go for the super long bomb charge if you make that big roll. So that definitely is helpful here. So yeah, this, again, having heard people talk about it, is that, you know, it's allowing you to basically be more, or gamble a bit more on the charges you make. So again, if you don't make the charge into something and you're stuck in the open, you can go to something which is a bit closer. That definitely helps. Yeah, definitely. So and this is the broad observation from also the internet, is that the charging feels a lot more juicy now. There's more opportunity to do stuff. Right, and this I think is basically speaking what I speak to here, is that, yeah, okay. So before moving, select one or more units within 12 inches of a unit, and to move each of the units is your charge target. Yeah, so one or more, yeah. Each model must end its move closer to one or more charge targets. Each model that can end its move within 1 inch of one or more charge targets must do so. Each model then ends its move engaged within one or more charge must do so. After moving, unit must be engaged with all of the charge targets. Must be. Unit cannot be engaged with one. Yeah, okay. So you can't basically be engaged with stuff that you want a charge target, and until the end of the phase, end of the turn, each model unit has the fight first ability. So you still fight. Okay, so that's kind of what I said before. And again, as we've heard from Mert's announcement, is now you can basically say, I want to charge two things. One is closer, one is further. You roll the closer charge, you get into combat with them, as opposed to failing the big long charge and just staying sat where you are. So that definitely is helpful for all of the chargy stuff out there. And again, some helpful descriptions to go through it. So, okay, the fight phase, again, not a fight phase connoisseur. I'll do my best as a pretend fight phase connoisseur. Let's see how we go. So both players make pile-in moves with all of the eligible units they choose to move. If eligible, section describes. Okay, so a pile-in is 3 inches. You're eligible if you're engaged, you made a charge move, or if you did an overrun fight, which we'll cover in a second. So my understanding is you do all the pile-ins, so basically do all the charges, then you do all of the pile-ins, and there's still the 3-inch pile-in. Yeah. So select pile-in targets. If your unit is engaged, every enemy unit is engaged with. Otherwise, select one within 5 inches of your unit. Otherwise, select. Okay, that I think is new, within 5. Okay, all right. So if a model is in base contact with one or more enemy units, it cannot be charged. Each model that is moved must end its move closer to the closest pile-in target and engage with it as possible. After moving must be okay. I don't think this is any different. Again, I'm probably missing some key stuff for all the chargy people out there, but this seems to be the same. Start of fight phase. Now there will be something about overrun in a second, which is important to remember. Okay, fight. Here we go. So unit can fight if it's not already been selected to. It is engaged or was engaged at the start of this step. Okay, so this is important because this will get into overrun in a second. Players resolve the following sequence until all eligible units have been selected to fight and the attacks have been resolved. So resolve fight first combats, starting with the player whose turn it is. So the active player basically resolves the fight first combat. So fight first is obviously determined by the charge you made, and likewise the fight first ability. Now that has been changed. And I'm going to struggle to explain it because I hate fight first. Like when people charge my Gaunt Ghost, I'm like, I get to fight first. But when then I charge Gaunt Ghost into someone else that's got fight first, I'm always like, who fights first? But let's see if I can make sense of it here. But right, so the controlling player does the fight first. Okay, so the controlling player. So you charge, you fight first. Fine. Okay, move to the resolve. Right, okay. So let's pretend, okay, this has got an important part here. If there's no fight first units that are eligible to fight, move to resolve remaining combat steps where this player will select their next unit. Otherwise, the other player selects their next unit. So resolve, starting with the player who just moved this sequence onto the step. Players alternate selecting units. Otherwise, after resolve fire, if there's one or more, now return to the resolve. Okay, so having listened to other people speak about this and read numerous articles, is that finally changed and how I understand it, and do not quote me because I suck at the fight phase, I'm really good at the shooting phase, who would have thought, is I believe all that jank that used to happen with the fight first units, if you would charge, I believe, if you would charge a fight first unit, I believe you now still get to fight. Yeah, so if you charge into Gaunt's Ghosts, you get to fight them first, is my understanding. But I believe where fight first will be more important is if it's like an ongoing combat, that's when it's going to probably have more importance. So that would make sense, actually. Do not quote me, and if I'm getting this wrong, please tell me in the chat, is that if it's like, if you've got Gaunt's Ghost in combat for 3 turns, God forbid, they would all be the first to activate, yeah, because they got fight first. So is that if you've got, yeah, if they've been charged by a normal unit without fight first, again, if it's been multiple rounds of combat, God forbid, you would always be the first one to fight in each of those turns of the melee, the combat phase. Yeah, so that's my understanding. So if you charge, you get to fight. If it's ongoing combat where a unit's got fight first ability like Gaunt's Ghost, you get to fight first. And that's how I understand it. So again, I suck at the fight phase. I throw my Bulgrim at people, sometimes also my Rough Riders, and we just go from there. Now, overrun, though, is a clarification on some previous stuff that used to basically always happen. So eligible if your unit's unengaged or was it unengaged at the start of the fight phase, but became unengaged during the fight phase. Okay, so this is where I hate the 40K rule language. So, right, so if you but became engaged during the fight phase, this, okay, so what I'm understanding here, okay, so if 2 units charge 1 unit, yeah, so if 2 aggressive combat units charge 5 rattling snipers, one of them kills that unit, yeah, they butcher the rattling snipers. The other charging unit now can do something called an overrun move. So what this is they can make 1 additional pile-in move, then fight as described in the making attacks section here, which is 0.4, which is quite helpful to sort of lay it out like that. Okay, so this is clarifying what used to happen to me sometimes is, okay, you would get charged by a Demon Priest and a Primarch Angron. He would charge into a Chimera. Angron, or whichever one would kill the Chimera. What this is now allow is that the unit which was charging as well but didn't get to fight because its friend killed the truck first, the Chimera first, they can now make an additional move of 3 inches. Of course, there's units who can make a 6-inch pile-in move, but this is again as explaining it in clear detail that you can basically go from 2 dudes charge a Chimera, one of them kills it, the other one then can move pile-in 3 inches to something else and fight that. Yeah, so that's how good melee players slingshot the units around the tabletop, is they basically do all this jank where, you know, they make sure the big fat base of Angron is positioned in a way that when his friend kills the Chimera, he can now move 3 inches into something else. Yeah, so that's a clarification, which I believe everyone was doing anyway. So good stuff there. Yeah, so a perfect example is looks like a Demon Prince and some World Eater dudes with chainsaws. Demon Prince kills the Chimera. They then pile into the girls and smash them to bits. Overrun fight. Yeah, this is the example. So that's exactly how it is, which is good to be aware of, yeah, when you position this stuff. Right, so after the charge, the fight, and the pile-ins, is the consolidation move. Now, just skipping through this quickly because I'm sure you've seen loads of this, is that this, okay, there's a bit of detail here, stick with this here. So they've got ongoing consolidation, engaging consolidation, objective consolidation. So again, I'm not a 40K rule lawyer guy, but always this clarity is helpful to explain things and to sort of make it quite clear when you've got these weird little interactions between different rules. So consolidation move is 3 inches. Eligible if in the fight phase unit was eligible to fight. Okay, so you fought in the previous phase. You can make a move as described in moving. So before moving, select the consolidation mode, ongoing consolidation. If you're engaged, you must select this mode and select every unit it's engaged with. Okay, in engaging consolidation, otherwise if unit is within 3 inches of 1 or more enemy units, you must choose this mode. Okay, so if you're stuck in combat, if you're within 3 of 1 or more enemy units, and objective consolidation. Otherwise, if you're within 3 inches of 1 or more objectives, you must select this mode. Okay, so if you're in combat, you're near an enemy unit, not in combat, and you need an objective. So what can you do? So whilst moving, if you're in combat, models in base contact with one or more enemy units cannot be moved. Okay, each model that is moved must end its move close to the closest selected enemy unit and engagement as possible. Okay, so I don't believe that's any different to how it currently is, but if you've got a unit which is in combat, the dudes in base to base can't move, but the other dudes around them, they can be moved towards the closest selected enemy unit. Now, if you are within 3 of another enemy unit, each model that is moved must end its move closer to the closest selected enemy unit and engage with it as possible. Fine. So if you've got Angron, he's killed that Chimera, he's slungshot onto someone else, some jungle fighter, killed them. If he can then move, if he's then within 3 inches of someone else, he can then move into them to also fight. Yeah. And the final one is objective consolidation. So this is, you must be moved within range of the selected objective if possible, or closer to it if not. So end its move within range of the marker if possible, or closer to it if not. Now, again, we've spoken about this, is that, and this must be also discussed here, is that this is a lot looser in inverted commas about moving towards objectives. So there was a lot of this, there was in 10th edition meant to move directly towards the objective marker. Now remember that in 11th edition, objective markers have been basically explained as terrain pieces. It's not saying you've got to move towards the center, the left, the right, the bottom, the top. It's just you've got to move towards it, yeah? Or closer to it if not. Now that is also crucial, is that you can basically move anywhere you want towards an objective. Yeah, remember objectives are going to be big fat terrain pieces. So if that is the terrain piece, in the old days, you've got to move towards the center. But now you can basically move, you can move onto a corner, for example, or move that way or that way. So as long as you're moving towards it, it's okay. There's no more having to move towards the middle. You just have to move closer to it. So that is a bit easier to manage and also very helpful. So after moving, each model that started moving engaged is still engaged. Okay, if you weren't engaged and moved into engagement, your unit must be engaged with all of the selected enemy units. Okay, 1 unit. If 1 or more enemy units was engaged, you set to the fight, your opponent must select each of those units one at a time, and then becomes eligible to fight. Okay. Your unit must move around. It's fine. So no different there. Cool. Yeah. Chimera, Crimea. I do it on purpose because everyone has I call it Chimera. I enjoy that. Oh, and Cassius Kane. Yeah, I don't know. I want to see his rules, Cassius Kane, because I've read all the books. I love Jurgen. Hopefully Jurgen gives, this is Cassius Kane, the Commissar miniature with the Valhallan assistant with the melter. Listen to all the audiobooks, are amazing. Yeah, hopefully he gives him like a 4 pain against mortal wounds or something, or psychic attack, like a Sister of Silence, because he's a blank. But yeah, I'll do a video if he gets rules, because I'm a kind of dude who likes to basically buy miniatures you can play. However, it may be an exception. I might actually buy Commissar Kane and Jurgen, because I've listened to a lot of the audiobooks and I love them. They're really good. All right, so hopefully that all made sense with the fight phase. It's always, again, I sort of glaze over sometimes with people when I'm playing like a really combat aggressive army. You're just going to trust they I think he will end up like Hell's Last. Yeah, good one. It could be Legend off the bat, which would be subtly quite annoying. Right, battlefield and tactics. Okay, what tactics am I speaking about here? So, all right, terrain. So placing terrain before the battle. Place a selection of blah, 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 blah. Okay, terrain. Okay, before the battle, place a modifier. What is all this? In each case, the area of the battlefield, blah, 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 terrain categories. Okay, I'm not going to read this too much. Now, the reason why I say that is because I typically play tournament-style games. We've just got this very boring layout, which is all done for you. However, for those of you who don't like to play that, which is completely fine, you may want to build different terrains. It's like I've got a crater terrain I've barely used, where a lot of these may actually bring it to life a bit more. But now they've got exposed, they've got light, dense. Now, exposed is, I believe, a new term. It's going to be things like craters, razor wire, I've got all laid out like as an obstacle. I can't remember what it was called in the military. When I was in the army like 20 years ago now, you had basically barbed wire staked in the ground quite low. Don't know what that was called. I'm getting a bit technical, but you had like short stakes about that long in the ground. You wrap barbed wire around them, and often you camouflaged it. So as the person ran into it, the trooper would say, that would be exposed terrain if you want to go and build that. Light and dense. Okay, so you got exposed, light and dense. Is that it? So that's it. Okay, that is actually helpful. I like this because it's simplifying things. So you've got exposed, you've got light, you've got dense. And it appears to be pretty self-explanatory. A mission's deployment zone may define which terrain category should be present with each terrain area. Meeting these requirements will get the best game experience. Note that terrain features showing the same terrain area can belong to different terrain categories. Very interesting. So this, okay, very helpful. So this is dense terrain. So you've got exposed, light, and dense. So these walls, which I actually own this terrain set, are dense. Helpful. Okay, terrain paints on the battlefield. Okay, this again they've shared already is you can, if you want super like into it, you go buy these cardboard cutouts, which I'm sure they're going to charge way too much money for, but that indicates the terrain feature. Then you can plonk down, you could basically play it just as it is, or you can plonk down whatever you've got in your terrain box at home, including you've got dense, light, and then you've got exposed, as I just mentioned before. And yeah, I was in the army, like I'm 41 now, so back when I did 8 years in the Australian Army as a rifleman, years ago now, because I'm an old guy. Right, so terrain and movement. Okay, so exposed and light. All models can move through horizontally and vertically for exposed and light terrain. If it's dense terrain, infantry, beast, swarm, and mobile, which is a new term, can move horizontally through dense terrain features. Now, infantry, beast, and swarm can move vertically through dense terrain features. Okay, so this is helpful. So mobile, I'd assume, is the new word for mounted. Totally guessing, because that's going to include biker boys, like Spaceman biker boys or Gene Stealer Cult biker boys and Rough Riders and Death Riders, is that they can move horizontally through dense terrain features. Now, again, we don't know. We've got to see the actual data sheet for Rough Riders. Is if they've got now the mobile keyword, that means they can move through dense terrain, which is going to be things like walls. But only infantry, beast, and swarm can move upwards through terrain. Yeah, so we'll have to see. What comes through there. So other models can move through dense terrain features, provided that all section of the terrain feature move through that the model's base would move through 2 inches or less in height. Otherwise, the moving model must move vertically to ascend or descend such sections. They cannot move through ceilings and floors whilst doing so. It cannot end the move on any surface of the terrain which is not on ground floor. Okay, so other models, monsters and vehicles will be this, is that they can move through dense terrain as long as it's not more than 2 inches high. Okay, so theoretically, Baneblades and Limb and Rust battle tanks and Regoldons can move through walls that are shorter than 2 inches. Now, clearly you can't finish it, sat on top of it, and you can't drive. If it's a 2 inch, like for some reason you've got a 2 inch terrain piece with a ceiling and a floor, you can't end on top of it. But we'll see what else comes to life, because this, we'll see. And pre-painted terrain, I don't know, probably not. I've got a fair bit of terrain myself already. But again, I live in London, in the UK. Is like you go to like typically like these little gaming shops, and they've got like pre-built terrain for you. I don't play here any home hammer. I live in a tiny flat with a 3-year-old kid, so no chance, unfortunately. Moving vertically, so you must remain ½ inches horizontally of that terrain feature. At the distance moved vertically. Okay, so this is saying if you want to go up terrain, you've got to stay within ½ an inch as your imaginary miniature is going up the side of the wall. But basically you measure, which you did anyway, you just basically measure, this is a 4-inch move to get up the wall, and then it's a 2-inch move to get in there. So that, again, stating it all quite cleanly here. So setting up or ending a move, models can be set up or end that move on the ground floor, terrain features. Models can be set up and end the move. Not if, okay, so this is now talking about if you've got, again, if you've got some really nice terrain, which is good to see sometimes, is if you've got 2 ground floor and the top floor. You can end a move on the top floor, not the ground floor, if you've got one of the following, is that if you've got infantry, beast, swarm, fly, or monster. Okay, so this is obvious. You can put some Kazkin at the top of your two-story terrain piece. You can beast, swarm, fly, which is going to be helpful for things like tower, where they're flying crisis suits and stuff like that, but also monsters as well. So, but however, after ending that move, the model is stable and no part of its base overhangs the outer edge of that surface. So again, for a big monster, that's probably not going to work because, again, it depends on what you've made, or the terrain sets I've seen is that typically it's like a little bit of probably like 2 or 3 guys can fit there in maybe like 2 ranks, but a big fat monster on like a ginormous base can't. But again, this is all very good clarity. It's important to say this. So obviously, if the model isn't stable, it's going to fall off, and or if it overhangs the edge of that floor. Yeah. So again, it's all good. It's all stated quite clearly here because this is always very helpful. Okay, and there's something about plunging fire, which I'll speak about in a second. So this has been chatted. So we'll get onto that. Plunging fire. So okay, terrain. Fine. Again, some nice little illustrations to bring it to life because it is confusing. Now, saying this vehicle cannot move through this dense terrain, but it can move vertically to ascend. Yeah, okay. So a Lemon Rice battle tank could now drive over this crate from what it's saying. But you've got to basically measure. You've got to measure 2 inches to go up, then you move the 2 inches over, then you move there. So that's how I understand it so far. Vehicles can drive over stuff which is shorter than 2 inches, yeah? Fine. Okay, right. This has obviously been shared a lot, is the benefit of cover. It's changing. So terrain can affect the visibility depending on whether the benefit of cover, hidden, obscuring, or solid rules apply. So the benefit of cover. If from a range attack targets a unit, if every model in that unit meets one or more of the following conditions, that unit has a benefit of cover. So they're infantry, beast, and swarm. Not mounted, which I don't know if exists anymore, nor mobile. So you've got to be infantry, beast, or swarm, and is within a terrain feature. And the crucial thing in here is that model, every model, okay? So again, it's important to break this down. Every model in my 26 Canadian Castellan brick must be within terrain, and they've got to be infantry, beast, or swarm, so that's fine. The model is not fully visible to the attacking model due to one or more intervening terrain features or one or more intervening obscuring terrain feature areas. Fine, okay, so my 26-man brick of dudes is on a terrain feature. They get the benefit of cover. Every single model, yeah? So crucially, as I understand it so far, is if you've got only one guy who can't get into the terrain piece, you don't get the benefit of cover, is how I understand it. Now, the benefit of cover reduces your ballistic skill. And this, again, is a crucial thing to look at, is it's not -1 to hit. It reduces your ballistic skill. So Kaz can go from ballistic skill 3 to ballistic skill 4. Guardsmen go from 4 to a 5, etc., etc. So we'll have to see as more stuff comes through this document, what else can interact with this. But what this does mean is if something else makes you -1 to hit, for example, it stacks on top of that. Now, that's how we understand it so far, but with this thing, you've got to read through everything to get the full picture. But the benefit of cover now is not impacting your cover save, your saving throw, it's impacting how well your opponent can hit you. Yeah, and again, having read this, is that the benefit of cover is given to infantry, beast, and swarm if every model is in that terrain, area terrain, yeah? Okay, hidden. Right, so a model is hidden, and we've seen this obviously in the internet a load, is that infantry, beast, and swarm, again, is within terrain area, and that contains one or more dense terrain features. Okay, so this is important. So to be hidden, which we all know is a 15-inch range now, is that model is infantry, beast, or swarm, is within a terrain feature and has to have dense terrain feature aspects to it. So that would basically be something like this, yeah, because this has got dense terrain, yeah, that obviously the two broken up walls, the bits of rubble. So if this was just the terrain terrain area thing by itself, you wouldn't be hidden because you don't have any dense terrain. But as soon as you get dense terrain features in that terrain feature, then you become hidden. Now, this again is all tied to the wider commentary, shooting armies are dead. But the more we start to see, I'm not convinced shooting is dead whatsoever. And likewise, having played against Heretic Dave, who's got a fantastic YouTube channel which does mostly battle reports, as we played 10.5 edition, we had hidden, is given in like the suggested layouts as by the time the units have basically come onto an objective, which is a terrain piece, and your units get close enough or move naturally around the tabletop, you're going to be seen anyway. Yeah. So 15 inches feels quite short, but when you play like on the suggested terrain layouts, it isn't really. Now, clearly, if you're playing a more relaxed game of like big open areas, not much terrain, this will be a significant impact because you've got less terrain, just the nature of the game you're playing. But this again, it's getting into some stuff here is that it has to be a terrain area type, and it has to have dense terrain. Yeah, so if it's a terrain area which doesn't have dense terrain, it's got exposed or light, you're not hidden. Okay, so, and of course, mobile mounted monsters and vehicles don't get hidden, according to this so far. On obscuring, terrain features containing one or more light or dense features are obscuring terrain areas. If every line of sight drawn between two models crosses obscuring, okay, so this is no different. Is if you can't see them with a piece of dense terrain, which is basically a wall, you can't shoot them, obviously. And solid. Okay, so dense terrain features have the solid rule: line of sight cannot be drawn across any of the enclosed gaps in the surface of such terrains that is 3 inches less from ground level. Okay, so I believe this is basically speaking to windows, yeah. Again, you may have some terrain sets with little windows, which look super cool. If line of sight cannot be drawn across any enclosed gap in the surface of such a terrain feature is less than 3 inches, which is 3 inches or less from ground level. Okay, so basically, and again, you're thinking of the GW terrain sets they sell, which I've got this one is quite nice. Is that if we go up to, I'm not with any examples here, but let's say there was a window here. Yeah, as long as the window's within the first 3 inches, you can't be seen through it, I believe is what they're clarifying here. Yeah, so we'll understand as we go on. All right, so what's next? All this stuff here. Okay, so again, this is always helpful to make sure you understand what's happening. Yeah, okay, so this is good. This is actually quite helpful because it's saying here, Unit B doesn't get -1 to hit, -1 ballistic score because the two ladies at the front are outside of the terrain terrain area. But these girls are -1 ballistic score because they're in here and it's a piece of dense terrain. But then for vehicles, which didn't come to life in what I read just before, is if it's obscured by a piece of terrain, it's also -1 to hit. So this is the thing, is that vehicles have always been able to get cover because all you've got to do if you're playing is simply move this rhino even and just put basically the toe of the track behind the corner of terrain. And then it's going to be -1 to hit, -1 ballistic score, sorry. Now that then gets into, which we'll speak about, I'm sure come to life in a document somewhere, but the bit of cover is clearly different. Your -1 ballistic skill, but it's not impacting your saving throw. So this has me really thinking about, and I'm sure you've seen other channels speak about it, is AP1 now suddenly is way better because AP1 in 10th edition, in this example here, was essentially AP none. Yeah, because you get a +1 save in 10th edition because you've got the benefit of cover. That's now flipped in a sense, is that you're harder to hit, but you've got no, this saving throw is basically not any better. Yeah, so this then gets into, and I'm sure you've seen various different bits have been coming out, and will come to life in a later document, is that things like psychic ignore penalties to hit. Numerous different factions in a detachment rule or specific shadowings can ignore cover, which means now not only are they going to be not impacted -1 ballistic skill, but you are going to get no additional benefit to your save. So that means they hit you normally and you save worse. Yeah, so again, if this was 10th edition in this example, these Tau dudes would be shooting this rhino normally And then the sisters player would have a better saving throw because it's got the benefit of cover. This is now flipped, where the tower is shooting worse, but the saving throw is not any better. It's actually worse, depending on the AP, of course. Now, as I said, if any unit can ignore cover, that's helpful. If units can strip cover, that's helpful. So the Hellhound is a good example where you can remove the benefit of cover. So in this theoretical example, you could flamer the Rhino, which means everything else that shoots it now shoots it normally. Likewise, in Grizzled Company, you've got a stratagem where you can remove cover. So you basically are removing now the -1 ballistic skill. But then if there's just other units out there, like, for example, when I played Heretic Day, we had the Havocs, the Chaos Space Marine Havocs. They ignore penalties to hit. So suddenly the las cannons are hitting normally, and AP3 is AP3. It's not AP2 in cover, it's AP3. So that's why I say AP1 autocannons, for example, suddenly you're actually more scared than they used to be, obviously, yeah. Because as opposed to saving on a 2 from Liminal Battle Tank, you're saving on a 3. Granted, it might be hitting with less shots, but the more shots that go through are more quality shots. So that's definitely an observation. So good to see you raising Rune Lords. Nice to see you, man. And yeah, play it back quick. I'm rambling later. It's like my style. I ramble. So play it back. We hit 2 times. We'll see how we go. So again, loads of detail about sort of, here we go. Okay, thank you. Here's my example for the window, is that in this example, because the window is within the first 3 inches of the wall, the girls can't be seen through there, but the girls at the top can be seen. So good. Again, this clarity is always helpful because it does feel like 11th, they're trying to push more terrain because, yeah, the concept of objective markers made it like circles is a bit silly. So we'll see how we go. All right, objectives. So, all right, objectives, terrain objectives. If a mission uses objectives, it will state where they're located on the battlefield. Typically, a mission will have deployment map showing the several points, but okay, no different. The location of each point should coincide with terrain area. That terrain area is the objective, and it's called a terrain objective. Very good. Okay, level of control. At the start of the battle, no objective on the battlefield is controlled by either player. To gain control objective, and a player needs to have one model with an OC characteristic of 1 or more within range, no different. A model's within range of terrain, okay, within a terrain area. So let's quickly go back to terrain area, because this is helpful for Jeffrey, probably more than you, because I'm a slow learner. A terrain area, again, let's go all the way back, because, right, so that's a terrain area. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen announced, you can buy these cardboard cutouts, which are going to be terrain area templates. Now, they're going to be just overpriced pieces of cardboard when you can then plonk your physical plastic terrain, if you want to buy the painter stuff or make your own, on that terrain area. But again, what it's clarifying is that terrain area is now going to be an objective marker, or terrain objective, I believe is the fancy terminology. Whether you put terrain pieces on that to make it dense, exposed, or light is obviously up to you, or the rule pack, mission pack you're obviously paying attention to. But that cutout is going to be the objective terrain, the terrain objective, which obviously is way bigger than a circle, which you currently play on. Yeah. Okay. So this is good for Jeffrey to see. Hopefully helpful for you too. You, the viewers. Let's go back down. Okay. Now, level of control is no different. It's objective control value. Now, this again, this is actually obviously no different, and just observation is compared to 9th edition, this is so much easier to navigate. In 8th and 9th, you had like units which were objective control, which meant that they always held stuff over your opponent. So you could have, like, I believe from memory, 1 guardsman who was objective controlled, basically 1 guy by himself holding objective over an Imperial Knight with like a massive big model. So it's all been cleaned up, but this looks to be all the same. OC is the same. You basically just work out who's got the most. So secured objectives, some rules allow objective to be secured by a player's army. Okay, so this again is a clarity in language, is the Cadian shock troops have got that. You've got objective sticky. Grizzled Company with the whatever the stratagem's called, we can sticky objective is now called secured objective. So it's actually a clarification of the language. Until the personal control is greater than that. Yeah, okay, so that's no different, I believe. That's good. Controlling a terrain objective. Okay, let's look at this actually, because this is helpful. So Right, so this vehicle has an OC characteristic of 3 and it's within the terrain feature. Within the terrain feature, fine. This vehicle has OC characteristics of 2, so that's 5 in total for the Sisters player. And there are 6 models in the terrain feature. That's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 6. And then you've got 2 dudes here. So both players add together the OC characteristics of that. And then the red player, yeah, okay, fine. Okay, so one observation though, which is crucial always, is that you don't have to be wholly within, you just got to be within, yeah? So the vehicle has just got to be within. And this is actually no different to when you play on the circle markers, is that you can literally just put a vehicle with the corner of its track touching terrain, touching the objective. So this is no actual difference, but it's good to always clarify this, is that it's no different. You just have to be towing onto an objective, half your base on the corner of the sponson or the track, and you're contributing to the OC value of your objective control value on the objective. So very good. Okay, all right, stratagems. So this is obviously, there's a new one in here somewhere. See if I can get it quickly. But right, so when, who, effect, restrictions. You can use stratagems multiple times during the battle. Cool. Each player cannot use the same stratagem more than once in the same phase. Fine, no difference. Now, this is then different. Is unless otherwise stated, each player cannot target the same unit with more than one stratagem in that phase. So this is obviously a restriction compared to 10th. For example, that means Luminous Battle Tank, you can't pop smoke, for example, to give yourself the benefit of cover, where you'd be -1 to hit, -1 Blister skill, and also Armor of Contempt from Grizzled Company, whatever it's actually called. So you can no longer do that. You do one or the other. I'll probably do actually the reduce AP. So this obviously will impact everything, and they're doing it obviously to basically remove that some units just become like turbocharged, where you can stack stratagems, particularly combat units, I believe. But again, the main one I can think of is that you can no longer pop smoke on a vehicle and give it then Armor of Contempt from Grizzled Company, or maybe the stratagem, I don't know, some other ones where you can -1 incoming damage, for example. Now, this is going to be no difference, is basically blah, blah, blah. You basically use a strat, cost you CP. Core stratagems. Now, let's look here. I'm going to put on my spectacles now because my old eyes are getting sore. Forgive me. Okay, so you would have seen Heroic Intervention is different. It's been enhanced, whereby you've got 2 levels. You can either spend a CP or spend 2 CP. So the first one, I believe, is no different. They're now calling it Leap to Defend, is that one friendly unengaged unit within 12 of 1 or more units. So you can only select a vehicle if it's a character or walker. Okay, fine. So basically you can charge with everything else, any other type of unit, but if it's a vehicle, it must be a character or a walker. So that means a Limon Russ tank commander or a Limon Russ, a Regal Dawn tank commander can charge into combat. Likewise can, obviously, Imperial Knights, for example. Now, one Fat Reserve. One friendly unit within 12 of 1 or more friendly. Okay, so you've got your Regal Dawn tank commander within 12 inches of 1 or more enemy unit. Okay. Now, I want to make sure I'm getting this because I know you can now be counter-charged, but I want to read this carefully because I think there's some... Right, end your opponent's charge. Okay, end your opponent's charge phase. So your opponent's done all their charges. Okay, so this is crucial, is end your opponent's charge phase. Right, so once I've done all their charges, you can decide what to do here. So one friendly unengaged unit within 12 inches of 1 or more enemy units. And you can do it with a vehicle that is a character. So resolve a charge. When doing so, before making the charge, you must select one of the following modes. Leap to Defend. When selecting charge targets, you can only select, got it, okay, this is the clarity. So, the charge with the face of it, let's charge with this face. Right. Okay, fine. So, your opponent's done all their charges. You choose one of your units, that can be a vehicle character, within 12 of 1 or more other enemy units, yeah? Then for 1 CP, you can do a charge move into an enemy unit that made a charge move in this phase. Okay, so they've charged one of your units. Yeah, as long as it's within 12, you can roll a CP. You can spend a CP and make a charge into that unit, yeah? Now, 12 inches is further than the current 6. Okay, heroic intervention, it's called, which is still called. In 10th is 6 inches. This now broadens, fattens it wide to 12. Now, clearly, if you're going to spend a CP to do this, you know, trying to heroically intervene to a 12-inch charge is silly because, crucially now, you can't re-roll your charge because you spend a CP for the heroic intervention. You can't then spend another CP to re-roll your charge roll, yeah? So whilst 12 inches is a lot more giving, forgiving or giving, depending on how you view it, you're probably only going to want to be doing this if you've got like a 6-inch charge, where your chance of rolling the charge is quite high because you cannot re-roll the charge roll, yeah? Now, the other option is then the juicy one is into the fray. So when making a charge roll, if you roll higher than a 6, you switch it to it, just make it a 6. So the max you can charge is 6. But when selecting charge targets, you select one or more unit that is within 6 inches of your unit and within the maximum distance. Okay, so this is obviously with a 2 CP, you could now charge to something else that didn't charge any of your units. So this is obviously a big change, and it's going to be quite juicy to watch this happen on the tabletop, and definitely against super tasty combat armies, this will be a fantastic option they have okay, so pretend it's your turn. You haven't done any charges, and then they've got a unit within 6 of you. They could spend 2 CP to charge into you. Yeah, so this is the crucial one. Is that okay? You can intervene further, basically double, but who's going to be rolling a 12-inch heroic intervention? We'll see. But this is the crucial bit, is that in your turn, they could for 2 CP charge into you if you're within 6. So this is going to take a lot of getting used to. It means, obviously, you want to probably keep stuff a bit back further. But then also, you want to be sort of engineering ways that you're okay to have them charge into you because it may pull them into a certain position for a later part of the game. Yeah, but this is going to take a lot of getting used to. Just thinking out loud, it could be helpful to play maybe the Kalidas Assassin who has the Vect Aura for +1 CP cost for strategies within 12. That could become quite helpful because something that's costing your opponent 3 CP. And it is a big gamble, yeah, because rolling a 5-inch, 6-inch charge is not guaranteed. We've all seen opponents, and you always have a little smirk when it happens, is when they were like a Snake Eyes +1 or roll a 4-inch charge or a 5-inch charge. And because they cannot re-roll it, they may just spend 2 CP and it will just go up in the air. Yeah. So this is definitely something to watch out for. Given it's expensive and they can't re-roll it, depending how tight their CP management is, it may not always be possible. But this is clearly a big change. And also, likewise, heroically intervening within 12, it broadens it. But again, because you can't re-roll it, unless you're within 6 anyway, you're not going to risk it, are you? Or you may if you're a gambling man. So very interesting. And this is where the early commentary that combat army is going to have a field day is coming into it a bit more. Right, then they've got, okay, stratagems can be used in either player's turn, your turn, opponent's turn. So this is good. This is helpful. Core stratagems, course. Yeah, okay, this is somewhat helpful. I'm sure we're going to forget the color coding, but green can be used anywhere. Blue is your turn. Red is your opponent's turn. And then I'm sure you remember with the current stratagems, you've got like all these different terminology. They define them all. I don't know if that'll remain, but okay, so core stratagems that can be used in any player's turn. Blue is used in your turn. Red in your opponent. Okay, I'll try and remember all this. Okay, command reroll. I believe it's no different. It's very clear on what type of roles can be used for. So you can only use it for sort of the main sort of roles you'd expect. Epic challenge, I believe, is no different. So you can use any, as long as the each phase character select that models and weapons have the precision ability. So precision is obviously a specific keyword, which we'll see in a second. But what I understand, you basically have to be able to see the other character. So you've got a character attached to 10 dudes, charges a character with 10 dudes. As long as the two characters can see themselves, they can basically fight character to character. Insane Bravery is no different, and the crucial thing is you can use it in the blue one, which is your turn. Okay, so you can only use it in your turn. Fine, and you can only become unbattle shocked or ignore the battle shock roll once per battle, which is good. And remember, with this one, if you've got a unit which was battle shocked previously, they can't use a stratagem to become unbattle shocked. Yes, this is actually, you can only use it for the first time. Yeah. So again, if you've got a unit of dudes who have failed a battle shock test, and then they fail it again, in that turn you failed it again, they can't use Insane Bravery because they can't use a stratagem because they're battle shocked. So that has to be watched out for. Right, explosives is no different. It's essentially, they call it explosive and grenades. Now this is obviously, helping them manage the wider law that a lot of units have explosives. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, Tau, I'm making up shit examples. Maybe some sort of Tyranid has got something which isn't a grenade, it's got explosive, but it's still the same thing. Roll D6 on a 4-up, they suffer mortal wounds, obviously to a maximum of 6 because you're rolling 6 dice. Now, Crushing Impact is the old tank shock. Now it's now monsters and vehicle. Previously it was just vehicle. However, the absolutely cool change is that here, now, on a 1, you suffer a mortal wound, and on a 5+, they suffer a mortal wound to 6. So this is suddenly a bit more risky biscuits. Is that, and actually here, as you read it, is the maximum your opponent can suffer is 6, but the maximum you could suffer if you roll loads of 1s is uncapped. So you could Crushing Impact with a Bane Blade with 13 dice to roll. Let's say you roll, God forbid, 7 or 8 1s. You're going to take 8 mortal wounds. So, mathematically could happen, but suddenly makes tank shock or Crushing Impact a lot more dicey in the sense you've actually got to think about the impact if you do yourself a load of wounds accidentally per se, it may not be as worth it as it used to be. So that's the difference. I think it actually is going to impact us because impact me because I use tank shock a lot. But we'll see how it goes. So that's interesting. Okay, red is your opponent's. You can do this in your opponent's turn. So you've got Rapid Ingress. I believe that's no change. Overwatch. Okay, this is the introduction of Snap Shooting. Snap Shooting is a shooting attack, a unit within 24. Okay, fine. And that attack only hits on an unmodified hit roll of 1, and it can't be re-rolled whatsoever. So I'm sure you've seen this in obviously the announcements, is that you cannot, so basically you can only hit on 6s and you can not re-roll hits at all. So this is really important. Now this is important as well, is the end of your opponent's movement phase. So there's no more basically moving, waiting for opponent to say, oh, Overwatch over here. It's just you move everything and then you can shoot. Now, what is an important change alongside no rerolls to hit is that you can target one visible enemy unit within 24 inches of you, and only if it's an eligible unit. So this means even if an enemy unit doesn't move, you can shoot them with Snap Shooting, aka Overwatch. You can't reroll hits, so you're not going to be anywhere near as effective. But let's say you've got a Hellhound or a double Chimera, Crimea, or 3 Deathcore dudes with heavy flamers. If a unit didn't move, you could Overwatch them. So this is obviously new. Overwatch, broadly speaking, is going to be less effective, but clearly flamers will become more effective because they obviously always hit. Granted, they're not typically that tasty. The worst flamers out there are going to be the Hellhound, obviously, for us, but also the Land Raider with the super flamers. That's pretty tasty. But being able to shoot a unit which hadn't moved probably means your opponent will just have to move them behind cover. But that's a new one as well. Right, what else have we got here? So Smoke Screen. Let's see what this does here. So, okay, one friendly smoke unit, which is going to be Deathcore Engineers, Aquilons, and also, I believe, the Cadian Recon Squad. Is that, okay, so a unit in this, each time is either your smoke unit, when it's not fully visible because of a smoke unit. Basically gives you the benefits of cover. So this will mean that, and again, it's going to be probably less common than it used to be. But if you've got dudes out in the open, or you've got maybe in the example they showed before, you've got two sisters sitting outside the terrain piece, you could make them all get the benefit of cover, yeah? So either you make yourself, you always give yourself the benefit of cover, basically, is you can always give it to yourself. Heroic intervention, I believe it was just looked at because they just had it here. It was a big exciting one they've basically. So we've covered that, thank God. It's a bit onto there. Now, counter-offensive is what we used to call interrupts. I believe this is no different. So it's still 2 CP. And this is basically where you can basically pay 2 CP to fight before someone else fights. So that's no different. Not used much by Astra Militarum, to be honest, or maybe with Bulgrim. Right. How are we getting on? How long has it been now? I don't even know how long it's been. It's been a while. But let's now look at actions. So actions are back. They basically existed in 10th edition where you did cleanse, you did deploy, teleport homers, you did sabotage, but now they're bringing back the language to sort of clarify it. So actions, blah, blah, blah. Right, actions. All right, you cannot do actions if you hit one of the following criterion. So you can't do an action on the battlefield. Okay, fantastic. You can't do an action if you're a fortification or aircraft. Fine. You can't do an action if you're battle shocked. You can't do it if you're OC blank. You can't do it if you're engaged unless you're a Titanic unit. Okay, so a Baneblade could do an action if it's in combat. It may not advance or fall back or do another action. Okay, so this all makes sense. If a unit starts an action until the end of the turn, they cannot shoot, excluding Titanic, and they cannot charge. Okay, fine. The unit performs an action, makes them. If a unit leaves the battlefield, okay. So this again, if you played 10th, this is basically how you were doing it. Yeah, it's again just clarifying everything, tightening up some of the language, but you basically can do cleanse like you could before. Yeah, they give an example. Okay, deploy device, which will be some sort of secondary objective. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to go through this, but fundamentally, actions is just like what you can do in 10th, yeah, all the usual stuff. But again, tighten up the language and explanation. Right, what's next? Getting through it. Look how many. Oh man, how much? Okay, advanced rules. What's the advanced rules? All these pretty pictures to get through. Okay, moving vehicles and monsters. Each time you make a normal advanced move with a monster or vehicle, they can move through friendly and enemy models. Okay, here we go. Okay, so crucial. I said before the beginning of the video, they are saying monsters and vehicles can move through friendly models and enemy units. Didn't know that. So you can, a limitless battle tank can drive through friendly and enemy models that aren't monsters and vehicles. Okay, so your Baneblade, Rogue or Dawn, your Hellhound can drive through friendly guardsmen or traitor guardsmen, but obviously you can't finish on top of them. So that's an important clarification, but you can't drive through other vehicles. Okay, helpful. Frame, this is new. Some models do not have a base. Many of these are monsters and vehicles. Such models have the frame keyword. We've got to see what that is. I assume most of our tanks have the frame keyword, as do some other large models. Whether a rule refers to a model's position in relation to anything else in the battlefield, if the model has the frame keyword, unless otherwise stated, measure to and from the closest point in that model. So not necessarily from its base if it has one. Okay, fine. When rotating a frame model as part of the move, if the model does not have a base, turn it any amount for its central axis while keeping it upright. Okay, so I've got to see the keywords. I'm guessing Rogue or Dawn tank commanders, chimeras, Commissar Graves tank will have the frame keyword, but it's sort of, again, stipulating that you measure off what essentially is the footprint of the miniature, is how I believe it. Okay, here we go. Shooting and engaged monsters and vehicles. In your shooting phase, enemy models and vehicles that are engaged can be selected as a target of a ranged attack. Each time a model makes a ranged attack that targets such units, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Weapons by models in a unit engaged with that target. Okay, right. So, subtract. Okay, so this. So what we saw before for close combat, close quarter weapons, and it looks like they're they've removed the concept of big guns never tire. Okay, so if you're a Limit Rust battle tank and you're in combat with some other dudes, yeah, you are basically, you can shoot them with non-blast weapons, and shooting the dudes on your vehicle, you're -1 to hit. Now, it looks to be the same as if you decide to shoot into something else that is a monster in vehicle and it's in combat with one of your units, you can do so, but they're -1, you're -1 to hit still. Yeah, so then this is no different than what we've got at the moment, but they seem to have collapsed and removed the language of big guns never tire and also the pistol rule. So this essentially is big guns never tire. So, okay, fine. But again, they're clarifying it. Yeah, okay, great example. So perfect. Rogal Dawn Tank Commander, Rogal Dawn in combat with some other World Eaters. These guys can still shoot it, but it's -1 to hit. And likewise, when the Rogal Dawn shoots them, he's -1 to hit because he's in combat with them. Or he can shoot them as well. Yeah. Fine. And if for whatever reason he had a close quarter weapon, he could shoot them uninhibited. Yeah. Okay. Oh, all right, transport. So there is some new stuff here. Let's see what they start off with. So, okay, I believe this is no different. So you can basically start in a transport. You can get, okay, once per battle, from the first battle, a friendly unit can embark a transport model after making a normal, advance, or fallback move. Okay, so you can get into a transport the same. You still must move in 3 inches of that transport, and that transport wasn't set up on the battlefield. So it can't come in from reserves, and then you get into it, is what they're saying here. On the battle list term. So this is going to have some niche use cases because it's clearly stating here that if a transport comes in from reserves, for example, you can't move into it. So there could be some niche cases where that happens. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fine. It's now embarking on transport and on the battlefield. Fine. So disembarking. Okay, so in the active plays move phase, each friendly unit embarked on the transport can disembark if it's made a disembark move. If a transport model is destroyed, before moving from the battlefield, active player must make an emergency disembark. Okay, fine, we'll get into that. So this is, again, no different so far. Easy peasy. Okay, so disembark move. Okay, another complicated. Let me drink some water because it's been a while. Right, so disembark is either rapid tactical disembark, 3 inches, or a combat disembark. Right, let's read all this. Right, okay, let's see. So all the following plotty and but within transport as well. Okay, so right. So before moving, you've got to just decide on the mode. Okay, so you've got rapid disembark, 3 inches, tactical 3 inches, combat 6 inches. So rapid disembark, before you move, if the transport made a normal or ingress move, you can select this mode. Okay, fine. Tactical disembark. Otherwise, the transport remains stationary or has a move this phase, you can get out within 3. Fine. Combat disembark. You can select this mode, make a hazard roll for each model in that unit. So the hazard rolls we saw earlier is a 1 and a 2 now. A 1 and a 2 for everything. Okay, if you do it while you're moving, select up one enemy model, and each model in your wholly within the set distance of that transport. Rapid disembark. So rapid disembark is 3 inches. If that transport made an ingress move this turn, each model must follow the same rules that transport had to follow while resolving that move. Okay, so this is basically saying if you come in from an ingress move on the table edge, you have to abide by the rest of the rules that apply to the transport, which is going to get into the deep strike or rapid ingress rule we'll speak about in a moment. So this basically, again, it means if you're coming from reserves, guys get out, you can't finish within the stipulated distance, which now is 8 inches to the closest or any other enemy units. Yeah, so you got to basically still be outside that deep strike range, we'll call it here. Yeah? Combat disembark is within 6. Each model can be set up engaged within 1 or more enemy units that transport is engaged with. Okay, so this is getting into, again, if you have got the transport in combat and you need to get guys out, they can get out further, but they've got to roll a hazard roll and they can end up engaged with that enemy unit that was in combat or is engaged with the transport. So again, helping you manage those sticky scenarios. But likewise, probably for us, is if you want a rapid transport now, they can get guys out who may have to suffer mortal wounds, but they can end up in combat with you, yeah? Each model must be set up engaged, okay? And after moving, so normal disembark is if the vehicle is moved, unless it's got assault ramps on a land raider, they can't charge. And a tactical disembark is if make a normal or advanced move. Okay, fine. Tactical disembark is if you remain stationary. Yeah, okay, so tactical disembark is if you stayed still, they can get out normally, then move and advance. If it's a rapid disembark, made a move. Yeah, okay, so again, this is all the same. It's just confusing, but it's all the same. Now, emergency disembark rule. So if a transport was destroyed, make a hazard roll for each of your models. And again, if it's a 1 and 2, they suffer a mortal wound. You're not a 1 anymore, 1 and 2. Okay, if it's while you're moving, set up each model and you're wholly within the setup distance of that transport and as close as possible to that transport. Each model that cannot be done this is destroyed. So this is no different, but the setup distance wholly within the setup distance of that transport. I've got to see where that came up because I'm not sure what setup distance is. It'll be within 3 inches though. Now, if this happens, you get it over transport that blows up. Again, you take mortal wounds, and they're battle shocked, and they can't declare a charge. So this is again crucial, is because they're battle shocked. You've got to roll to be unbattle shocked, and if they fail the battle shock, you stay battle shocked, obviously. So suddenly getting out of a transport which blew up is a bit more risque in that sense. Fine, okay. But this, I believe, is no different because I think I saw somebody got to be within like base-to-base contact with a transport, but this looks like when you disembark, embark can be disembark, making a disembark move, 3-inch setup distance. Okay, no, it's the same. You can get out 3, or if the car's going to blow up or in a bit of a tight jam, it's 6 inches. So this looks like it's basically the same, except the hazard roll is now 1 or 2, not a 1. Okay, forming units. So they've added a bit more detail here. Is you've got now leaders and support units. So this is going to be on the data sheet. You're going to obviously stipulate what's what. My cat's just come in. It's all raining in London, but the support keyword is a new one. Come on, Max, there you go. Yeah, right. So let's see. So leaders and support. So they're going to stipulate what is what. And I believe this is all the same. Contains 1 or more bodyguard units. Yeah. Use the highest toughness of the bodyguard. Okay. The highest bodyguard unit. Even different. Okay. So this is going to be again. We've got to see what this says because I'm just thinking again the Bulgrim bodyguard. How do we manage that? And this is that attacking an attached unit is each can only have 1 leader and 1 support unit attached to it. So I'm guessing, for example, or we'll see what as a support unit is for guard. Maybe a command squad, maybe, or that probably would be a leader. But then what I'm trying to work out here is how the Bulgrim bodyguard thing works here. Yeah, so. Contains 1 or more bodyguards. Use the highest, toughest characters of the bodyguard unit, resolving an attack. Each use of those models. We'll need to see because I've always been confused by the bodyguard Bulgrim, but let's leave it there because I don't want to dwell on it too much. Now this I believe is all the same. Is that basically the units each give themselves the same keyword. So. Again, Cadian shock troops will give the Cadian command squad the regiment unit, and then like they'll basically share keywords. Now, then, and I'm not going to go through this too much, but the key highlight that I've seen so far is that abilities from each unit that are stuck to each other remain the entire game. So if you lost your Cadian Castellan, the Cadian shock and the Cadian command squad lose sustained hits. They always keep it, yeah. And it actually also says the enhancements as well, yeah. So if you've got an enhancement which impacts the units, if the character dies, they still keep the enhancement in that unit for the ability. And also I believe in some here is the concept that you basically determine what's attached to what in the army list building phase. Yeah, so you have to stipulate, which you'll have to do on the 40K app, and say that this is attached to this, and you can't deviate. And you're doing it anyway. Yeah, there were probably niche cases where you weren't attaching a Castellan to a Cadian command squad to Cadians, but it's all going to be stipulated here now. But the key takeaway here is that the abilities for the entire game. Yeah, so if something's destroyed, they still keep all the abilities they had. Yeah, and that may actually also, let's just check, because I'm thinking is that again with the Cadian command squad, given they don't have the regiment keyword, if the Cadians die, they can't be ordered. But let's see if we can, I don't know, in the attach all the keywords. An attached unit has all the kits of the component units. As such, an attached unit have to buy. Oh, yeah. But models in attached do not. The text target. Okay, I'm trying. Abilities. Only if apply even more part of an attached unit. Otherwise, shown to the source that as shown below. Yeah, this is the part here. This leaders support continue to benefit from their own. Yeah. Okay. So that's fine, but I don't know the answer that I've just posed is that what happens if, the Cadian command squad loses the Cadians because they got the regimental keyword, and we assume the voice of command for Astra Militarum is keying off a keyword. What happens to the Cadian command squad? So we assume the Cadian command squad doesn't have regiment keyword, but they're still going to maintain the ability from the Cadian shot, but I don't think they're going to maintain the same keywords, is from what I can read here. Because what I was hoping was, if you could basically have your Cadian command squad still be ordered after the 10 Cadian shock have been killed, but they're still going to get the ability of the Cadian shock where they get to sticky objectives or objectives secured, it's now called, but they can't receive orders because orders are keyed off a keyword, not a unit receiving it via an ability. Okay, so that is good clarification. Strategic reserves. So, okay, this is no change. Let's see if there's anything else here. So, okay, here we go. No, this one, before the battle declared thing, you can't put fortifications in reserves. Who would have thought? Place them on side. The combined points value of all your strat reserves, including those disappointments, cannot be more than 50% of your battle, your basically your list size. Yes, I believe that's the same. Not sure actually, but you can have 50% of your army in reserves now. Now you've got a one called reposition units. Some rules allow units to be removed from the battlefield and place a strat reserve during the battle. Units that use this are known as repositioned. So okay, Gaunt's Ghost will be repositioned. So new word there, repositioned. In addition to other rules that apply to such units, these rules can be used on units already moved that phase. That is set up in the same turn in which not still may not blah blah blah. Okay. All right. So there's a bit of detail here about like rules staying with them. But my main takeaway from this is that Gaunt's Ghost will be called repositioned when you uppy downy them. That's what this is alluding to, is the concept of uppy downy, but they now call it repositioned, is what I believe it is. Right, arriving from strat reserve, let's see what it says here. So arriving from strategic reserves, to arrive on the battlefield, strat reserves must make an ingress move. Okay. Now this, I believe, is they're going to, let's see when obviously the data sheets, but this will be, I believe, collapsing of language like deep strike, I think will be removed, but we'll see. But okay, so ingress move, set up distance 6 inches, set up distance 6 inches. So that is new. We'll come back to that. So for units in strat reserves, okay, you've got to be in strat reserves. You described, the unit is set up as described in setup. We'll see what that is in a second. Okay, you set up with the setup distance of one or more battlefield edge and more than 8 inches horizontally from all enemy units. So that's obviously closer. Used to be 9, now it's 8. Now, before the third battle round, while doing so, none of your models can be with opponent's deployments. Okay, that's no different. Yeah, so this is no different in rounds 1 and 2. You can only come in. You can't come in opponent's deployment zone, but you can be within 8. Yeah, so that is obviously closer. It means predominantly the melter will benefit. The multi-melters, for example, is because their melter, essentially, their melter ranges, their melter 2 ability is within 9 inches. It does mean now you're going to get melter 2, which is good. It won't affect things like grenades, because grenades you've got to be within 8 inches, for example, or what they call explosives or grenades now. But the setup distance, we're going to see what that is. A setup 6. Now, I'm pretty sure this will, let's see if I can find this. I wonder if this will work. Set up. Okay, before. Okay. So that, I believe, disembark. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand that language, and probably this is going to crash now because it's a bit slow. Okay, good. Back to disembark. Right, so strat reserves. Yeah, okay, fine. So you've got to be within 6 of the battlefield edge, no change, and you've got to be outside 8 as opposed to 9 at the moment, yeah? Okay, I believe this is all fine. There's no change. All right, flying and surge. It was funny they put them together. So a surge move, again, you bring all the language together. This is fundamentally where you can move in your opponent's turn. Yeah, so the classic will be, oh man, Victrix Guard. I'm trying to think. Well, Victrix Guard's the man I can think of, and also World Eaters. So they can't be battle shocked. They must be unengaged, and they haven't moved that turn. So that movement, they basically move as normal. Before moving, select the closest enemy unit to the surge target. Okay, the surge target is obviously the actual unit who can do that, and they can only do up to the normal move. Whilst moving, each model must end its move engaged with the surge target if possible. Each model that cannot end its move engaged with it must end its close to the closest surge target. Okay, so this is no different from what I can see. Again, if I got one of my lovely patrons saying he played an RT recently and he really had a tough time with the Victrix Guard. So Victrix Guard are very tough because they can reactive move plus surge move. But I think always understanding what it truly does is important, is that, okay, they have to do it into the closest enemy unit. And the classic with Victrix Guard and also World Eaters is that if they lose a dude, then they can do it. So let's pretend you shot them, yet you didn't kill anybody. They can't do the surge move, which may happen. But the key thing is, they can only do it to one enemy unit. Yeah, so they can't surge move into all of you. They've got to do it to the closest enemy unit. Now, the chef's kiss play is to put a cyclops demolition vehicle as the closest unit to them. They surge move into it, you blow it up, and then they just sat there by themselves waving their hands around. But this is a clarification in language, is that it's only one unit they can surge move into. But the key point here is that they have to be within engagement range of that unit, and anybody who can't get there, they can't get there, fine. And they can't do it again. You can't do it again. But it's interesting that you put this in a specific ruling here, because I believe in 10th it was in a few data sheets, but now it's probably more common than it used to be, which I don't like. All right, flying models. Again, this feels like there's a small change, which makes sense, but I think they're still going to do nothing most of the game. All right, so if it's flying, it can make a normal advance, fallback, or charge move. Before moving, and hi, SJB, yeah, good to see you, man. Are you in the US? You must be in the US, yeah, if you just finished work. Yeah, play it back on ×2, if not, well, 1.5, because I'm rambling loads, but hopefully it gives you some nuggets when you get the time. Right, so flying can make normal, advance, fallback, or charge move. Okay, so before moving any models in that unit, the active player can declare that it'll take to the skies. If it does so, whilst resolving that move, it can take to the skies, subtract from the maximum distance. Okay. Each time a flying model moves, ignore all vertical distances for how far it can move. Okay, fine. So my Valkyrie is now subtracting 2 from its massive move, and it can ignore everything that's a building. Okay. It can move through all types of models, including enemy monsters and vehicles. Okay, fine. So it can just fly over everything. It can move horizontally and vertically through all categories. Okay, it can fly through everything. So my Valkyrie can now fly everywhere. Super duper. What's the example? They can go Riptide. It can fly. Okay, perfect. It goes zoomy. It basically flies over the Rhino and the obstacles, the barricades there. Fine. But if it's got a movement distance, and this one it's got 16, for example, you just -2. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. Okay. Well, actually, yeah, because I don't think they've touched on here about the rules required for models coming in, like how basically aircraft models. It's aircraft models, which are the ones which are a bit weird. But this is good clarification. Again, there's none of this like measuring like a banana of your unit coming over. Like it's not going to impact much guard stuff. But for probably a lot of tower stuff which can fly. It's also going to be helpful for Custodes jet bikes. It's just very clear now what you do is just -2 when you zoom over stuff. Okay, that's good to know. All right, auras. So these are back. They definitely felt like they were coming away in 10th. Now they're bringing back this as a core rule. Of it, the main aura we've got is, anyone I've seen recently is in the new armored transport detachment thing, got an enhancement for a tech priest who can give all of his friends who are vehicles within 3 inches a feel no pain if they're a skirmish unit, which is below 11 wounds, I think it is. But an aura, okay, what is this? I have to be on the battlefield, obviously. It just worked late. Oh, sorry. Yeah, man, that sucks. It's a late finish for you, wherever you're based. Probably, I'm guessing in the UK, yeah. Oh, that sucks if you finish this late. Okay, so the crucial thing is you're going to be impacted by 1 aura at a time. Yeah, so you can't be double stacking auras if that's a thing. Okay, faction abilities. Okay, fine. Psychic abilities. Okay, what are we getting into? This is all just clarity language. Walker abilities. All right, plunging fire. It's in a weird place now. Interestingly, out of curiosity, if anybody's in the military, in the army particularly, is the concept of plunging fire actually relates to machine gun fire. I did a course many years ago with the Mag 58s on a tripod. It's the idea that and hopefully this is very interesting for you, is that over a long distance, the flight path of a round actually isn't straight. It basically does this, like a little bit of a banana. And the idea is you can hit targets behind cover. So you basically use the calculation of the flow of the round is that if you were shooting on a hill and dudes were behind cover behind a hill at a long distance, you would calculate where the bullet's trajectory actually would dip down, and therefore you could be striking guys you can't see. Yeah, it's not a common thing used as I understand it, but plunging fire actually is quite a technical military term. Very interesting. But let's see what it means in 40K. So let's go. So plunging fire obviously was something in 10th edition. It's been changed now. What it does, plunging fire, is it gives you +1 to hit. So how do you get it? So an attacking model is on a section of a terrain feature that is 3 inches or more. So this used to be 5, now 3 is obviously a lot shorter. So that means a lot more of the terrain sets will give you plunging fire. So it's +1 to hit is always very good. And also towering units, aka knights, are always going to be +1 to hit. So again, super early observations is anything which ignores cover or anything which has got plunging fire means you're going to be hitting normally. Yeah. So again, if you've got some Kazkin up where these Sisters of Silence, Sisters of Battle are standing, they're shooting into someone else in terrain, they're essentially hitting normally because they got +1 to hit. Yeah, so this is where it's all come into life, and this is where my early feel is that, yeah, it's actually going to anything which ignores cover, either through abilities, plunging fire, or a stratagem, and it's got high AP like a melter, is suddenly going to do so much more damage because clearly they're hitting you normally and you don't have a cover save where the -4 AP became AP3. you suddenly got a Lehman Russ battle tank saving on a 6-up, and that is terrible mathematics. So again, my early feel is that anything which ignores cover and it's got high AP or even low AP is going to do a lot more damage than it used to. Yeah. So plunging fire now is, to be clear, if you're higher than 3 inches, which is a lot of terrain sets these days, or a big knight, you get +1 to hit, +1 ballistic skill. So that is new and of interest. All right, what else is there? Okay, here we go, aircraft. Let's see if my single Valkyrie is going to see any table play, and it looks beautiful because I put a red light in the back and I painted the canopy. Very interesting. Right, so let's see. Deployment. Aircraft must be always put in strat reserves. Movement. Aircraft are only eligible to make an ingress move. They're not eligible to make any other type of move. At the end of your opponent's turn, all aircraft models in your army that are on the battlefield must be placed in strat reserves. Okay. So you can only make an ingress move. They're not eligible. Okay. At the end of your opponent's turn, all of them must place. I don't know what's going on here, and I think it sounds like they're just going to suck again. Each time eligible, make an ingress move. Okay. They're not making eligible. The end of opponent's turn and over. Must play each time. Okay, so we can move through other aircraft models. If some unit makes a piling consolidation or surge move, unless that unit can fly while making that move, ignore air. Okay, so it can't be charged. It can't interact with the fight phase unless a unit can fly. Okay, that is still a few things. So obviously, Angron can fly. A Riptide battlesuit can fly, so it could interact with your Valkyrie. Does not prevent it from eligible making a move. Being engaged solely with one or more aircraft units does not prevent a unit from being eligible to make. Okay, I don't think this is really different. What I'm not clear on still is the entire ingress thing, because, okay, you can't be on the battlefield. You must be, okay, shooting. Okay, plunging fire has no effect on you. So if you're in the sky, which makes 0 sense, you can't be better to shoot, but someone who's on a, this is fine, I mean, it's just 40K, but like these Sisters of Silence will be better at shooting, but the aircraft above them isn't better at shooting. But again, they don't want to make things broken. Fine. Okay. Aircraft can't charge and can only make that target melee flying units. Yeah, okay. So so an aircraft unit can't charge stuff, but something else that can fly can charge it. The aircraft can fight back against a thing that's flying, but it can't do combat into anything else. Fine. Okay, it doesn't have plunging fire and it can't do much combat. But what I'm not clear on was how it basically comes in and comes out. So I don't know how this is answered here. I don't know what this means. So you can't be on the table. You've got to be in strat reserves. But I don't know how this works here. And from what I've just seen is we'll have to see what the hover rule does, because the Valkyrie can basically hover, and that ignores these rules here. We'll have to see if it's in the rest of the document. We are getting quite late in the documents. We've got to see if it actually pops up. But that looks like aircraft will still suck. That's based off something I saw on the internet, so we'll see if that's actually true. Right, reference. Now we're on to some of the easy stuff. Okay, so abilities. Core abilities. Okay, core abilities, weapon abilities, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there's any different. Okay, duplicated abilities. Let's see what this is, because this, again, it's always good they clarify this, because there'll be someone, I'm sure, who tries to like say that because you got sustained 1 from a character and the dudes become sustained 2. Let's see what it says. That's not the case. Multiple cases of the same core ability or weapon are not cumulative, regardless of the. Okay, great, perfect. So again, if you come into someone who's newish to 40K trying to game this system, and they say, because I've got rapid fire 1 and sustained hits 1, sustained hits 2, it makes it sustained hits 3. You're like, no, that's not how it works. It's based on this, yeah. So in that case, you'd go sustained hits 2, but it's not stacking here. Yeah, okay. Multiple instances do not include a number are duplicated, even though. However, in the case of scouts must. Oh, interesting. Okay. If you've got a character and some dudes, and they've both got scouts, this is saying you have to choose the lowest scout. Okay, that's obvious when I say it out loud, but let's pretend you could attach, making stuff up here, a scout sentinel character attached to some jungle fighters. You can still only scout move for 6 inches, which is the lowest. Good, you can't do that because there's no characters yet for scout sentinels that I know of. Here we go. Yeah, so multiple instances of weapon abilities that include number, a duplicator if the number varies. So yeah, they would choose sustain. There we go, that example. Even that keyword varies, the controller would select between. Yeah, okay, fine. So there's no stacking of things which are the same. It's just you choose the better of the two. Yeah, which is, again, it's always good to have this clarity. Now we get into all of the actual weapon like key generic abilities. So anti is no change. Blast is the same. It's 5 models, gives you an extra attack on your blast weapons. Assault is no different. Now, cleave is the cool new one. So cleave is going to be for your super dicey, slicey combat weapons. Use that for every 5 models, you get an additional attack. So it's essentially blast in the combat phase, which I think is great. So it's super cool. So, well, it's not cool for us because we don't have many, but yeah, if someone's got, you know, a big chopper, which is going to be the best example for orcs, is they'll get for every 5 models, they get blast, essentially, yeah. So that's cool. So they got blast in the fight phase. There's close quarter, which essentially is the changing of the pistol keyword, I believe. Went through this, but basically lets you shoot into combat without any hindrance to being to hit. So if you've got a pistol close quarter weapon, you shoot normally only into the unit you're engagement range with. Okay, deep strike makes it. So it's interesting they call, so deep strike is the same as an ingress move. Everyone that you must be within 8 inches horizontally from all enemy units, even if that's within your opponent's deployment zone. Even. Okay, fine. Now this, and I wanted to go back to check on the charge phase, is that this, for those of you who've just joined us or just looked at this quickly, is that it would feel like you've got an 8-inch charge, but actually got to go back and look at it. Is that's not actually the case? Now someone, SJB has said with aircraft. So I wonder how this will work. Plunging fire with orders. Oh yeah, good one. Okay, so this person's asking the plunging fire, which gives you +1 ballistic skill. How will it interact with orders? Because orders are improving a ballistic skill. Now, we haven't seen anywhere yet that I can remember talking about like giving yourself +2 to hit, +1 to hit, that type of thing, like a limit. So I don't know, because I've not seen anything so far. Because a good point is that if plunging fire is improving your ballistic skill and orders are improving your ballistic skill, what does that do? Do you get +2 to hit? So I don't know. It's a good one. Now, they're also explaining about aircraft. Aircraft will come in the movement phase, hang around till the inner opponent's turn. Oh, okay. Okay. So they come in your movement phase, hang around. Okay. It's still shit though, isn't it? It's just, anyway, but yeah. I'm not going to play my Valkyrie unless it's super cheap. I've only got one there. Now, devastating wounds, I believe, is the same. And the crucial thing is always with dev wounds, you do it at the end. Not that it really matters most of the time, because whatever's been hit by it's just been blown to bits. But this is helpful. Mortal wounds by dev wounds. Okay, so mortal wounds and dev wounds looks like they're sort of the same thing now, from what I can read. And you always do them at the end. You always do it as the last thing you do. Extra attacks is extra attacks, no different. Feel no pain is no different. Fights first, I believe, is no different. Now let's read firing deck. Okay, your shooting phase, it's about within it resolve. Impacts. Okay, so that's no different. Okay, fine. Right. Until this transport has resolved all of its attacks, it has all of their such weapons in addition to the other weapons. Units, but not eligible to shoot. Yeah, okay, that's easy. Is that if dudes are in a transport, they can't shoot, but if there's a firing deck, they can. You can shoot as many models that it's stipulated by the rule. So firing deck 2 for a Chimera, or firing deck 12 for the the new transport. But what I never know is, if you order the transport for guard, does that flow onto the dudes who are shooting out of the firing deck? And this isn't answered here, and it may have been answered earlier, but that's the one I always wonder. It's also likewise with Overwatch, is that if you had 2 jungle fighters sitting at the back of the Chimera with their flamers, could they also Overwatch? So I don't know how that's answered here. And that's something I've always some people tell me when I played in games, are like, yeah, the dudes on the top can Overwatch, but others say no, just the actual vehicle can Overwatch. So that's what I don't know. Now, hazardous is no different. Again, if you go back to the actual work, I covered it probably an hour ago now, is hazard rolls are now 1 and 2, universal, yeah? So 1 and 2, you will take mortal wounds. What else is there? Okay, heavy's already been publicized quite well. Now, heavy gives you +1 to hit, not improves the ballistic skill, so it gives you +1 to hit. To do this, you have to be unengaged, not set up on the battlefield this turn, so that means you can't come in from ingress, you can't do a rapid ingress, or coming from strat reserves. But crucially, is if you're on the tabletop that turn, as long as you don't move more than 3 inches, you also get +1 to hit. So that's great. Well, the key one will obviously be the heavy weapon teams for us. So the classic, always the favorite play, well, not favorite, but might come back now, is the jungle fighters with the las cannons on a heavy weapon team, so they could scout move 6. They could move just 2.9999 inches, and they're +1 to hit. Plus, you give them an order, suddenly they're going to be hitting on 3. So really good. So very good, actually. Okay, here's hover. Here's hover. So hover. Oh. Okay. Okay. So if you hover, you can take to the skies, but you don't subtract 2. I don't know what this means. Does this mean you can do everything else I just spoke about? No. Okay. So this means an aircraft can. So we have to. I'm still trying to get my head around this, but I believe this is no change. But it basically means you can still move around stuff, but you can just drive over stuff. Is my understanding. I'm still not clear on vehicles, to be honest, and I know one of you helped me there, but I find this a bit confusing. All right, ignore cover. No different here. Yeah, okay, so SJB say heavy weapon not moving on with plunging final or +3 to hit. Exactly. That's the great question. Yeah. So if you've got heavy, you're +1 to hit, you get an order, +1 ballistic skill. You got plunging flight, +1 ballistic skill. Does that mean you're hitting on 2s? And I don't know, because from what I've read so far, I haven't read about modifiers yet. That might be in here somewhere. All right, ignores cover. No difference. Each time that target cannot have the benefit of cover. Okay, and also, it also impacts stealth, yeah, because stealth gives it, we knew that already. But indirect fires is what we discussed before. So hitting on 6s, if nothing can see the target, hitting on 4, 5, and 6, if something can see the target, one of your other units, and you can't re-roll any of the shots, full stop. So indirect has been nerfed, we have to all agree, quite hard. Infiltrators, now this is no different, but the key thing is here is that they have to be more than 8 from your opponent's deployment zone and all enemy units. So not 9, but 8. And that matches what we're seeing for strat reserves and deep strikers, they're calling it, or swapping the name around, is 8 inches. Okay, lance is no different. If you made a charge, you get +1 to wounds, and lead is no different. And also lethal hits is no different. Yeah, okay. And this, again, is always good to read it through and just remind ourselves, is that yeah, because with lethal hits, is if you've got dev wounds, it does actually cancel out. But I believe this is saying the same thing, is that Choosing to automatically wound the target means no wound roll is made. You may decide against this as it means the attack cannot result. Okay, so this is saying if you've got lethal hits and dev wounds, you could decide that your lethal hits aren't lethal hits, but you then can roll the wound roll to try and go for the dev wound. So that is going to be helpful in some cases. Again, not much in Guard has got lethal and devastating wounds besides not dead dog. Well, it's different. No, that's a bad example. That's an incorrect example. But this is helpful for some other armies where they may want to go for dev wounds over lethal hits. Okay, fine. All right, lone operative is no different, I believe. Okay, fine. Melter's no different. Within half range. One shot is no different. There you go. Pistol and close quarter identical for rule purposes. So pistol, close quarter weapons is, again, the old pistol rule. And at least they're keeping it because all us older blokes and ladies who've been playing it for a while will probably forget what close quarters mean in a moment. All right, precision, I believe, is no different. You've got to be visible to each other to basically challenge each other to a big punch-up. Psychic, now this is where they clarify, psychic is you ignore all modifiers to that attack's ballistic score, weapon skill, or all modifiers to the hit roll. So and it's good to see psychic actually does something, because in 10th the psychic keyword was just like, cool, this is part of the data sheet. But now it means your wizards and witches are hitting everything uninhibited. So that's good for psychic units. Less so for Astra Militarum with like 1 or 2 psychic dudes and girls. All right, rapid fire is no difference. And then they've got scout. So this has got something new. Let's put it properly. Okay, you can scout 6 or 9, whatever you've got. Before you roll off, that's no different, yeah? Every model unit has the ability, you can do one of the following. If the unit is in Strat reserves, you can set it up. You can set up that unit anywhere that is wholly within your deployment zone. Okay, so if you, for some reason, let me get this right, put something in Strat reserves before the game begins, you could, because they've got scout, you can now go, I'm actually going to deploy them in my deployment zone. Okay, fine. So if I've got my Cadian Recon or my Jungle Fighters or my transport with dudes inside, which is a dedicated transport with scout, I could say I'm going to put in Strat reserves. I change my mind, deploy to my deployment zone. Cool, new one. If that unit's wholly within deployment zone, it can make a scout move. Okay, no change. If a unit's disembarked within a dedicated transport as set, it can make a scout move. So this is no different. This is new. This is new. Right, so if I've got scout, I could do some games. I could put, okay, I'm just saying it out loud. My Taurox with Cascade and Silent, I'm going to put in Strat reserves. I then change my mind and go, I'm now going to put on the tabletop. That's interesting. And you've got to do it in the resolve pre-battle. Okay, this is helpful. This is helpful. This is helpful. So that's good. It's just it's a new option, yeah, because you could hold back a lot more. Yeah, it's like a reverse of Lord Solo. You put things into Strat reserves, you take things out of Strat reserves. So that's cool. Okay, good to see. Good to see. Scout move. Okay, the unit must be more than 8 inches horizontal. Okay, fine. After moving. Okay, so again, respecting everything else before, is if you can make scout moves, you've got to be outside 8 from all enemy units. So this does mean the counter infiltration game, where you basically put, you put Gaunt's Ghost here, they put some infiltrating scout Space Marine dudes over there, is that if anything in their army or your army can scout, you have to stay outside of 8 inches from that unit, yeah? So that is, again, that's no change, except it's 8, not 9 now. Right, stealth, always get the benefit of cover, which essentially is the same thing really now. Support, you've got support and leader, which again, it's only going to come to life when you see all the different units, what they have. Okay, super heavy walkers, I believe this is no different. Okay, let's just check here because it's good to know. So they can make a normal advance or fallback, can move through models, but not other Titanic ones. They can move over monsters and vehicles, but not Titanic. And they can move through sections of terrain features of 4 inches of less. Okay. before moving that, you can select for all models net to be on a mobile keyword until that move ends. If you do so, okay, yeah, okay. So this again, it's in the new language they're using is that the mobile keyword means you can move through basically big walls, but just like in 10th on a 1, you become battle shock. Okay, fine. So it's no change really for big, Imperial Knights. Right, sustained hits is no different. Torrent is no different. Twin links is no different. I think we're almost at the end. Continued in the app. Digital support, starting strength, half strength, no different below. Fine. This is all the same, yeah. So remember, obviously, this applies to both 10 models and a unit with 10 wounds. It's going to be the same. Now, as discussed at the start, is that battle shock crucially starts now if you're at half strength. So if you start with 10, you're at 5, you've got to take a battle shock test. And again, I said before, is you've got to keep taking the battle shock test until you pass battle shock. So that goes back to some early editions of 40k, which is going to have a massive impact in general on the game, but also for things which can trigger battle shock, like the Night Lords or Tyranids. It suddenly has a lot more play, yeah. So that's that. Adding, okay, how many more have we got? We almost there. Oh man, there's more. Okay. But again, being positive is that all this clarity is good for the game because, again, if you've played 40k for a while now, if you've been through several edition changes, the first 3 to 6 months is just bonkers because all the interactions are a bit weird. There's going to be people just sort of game things. But if everything's clarified, it does mean it's harder to game it, which is not the intention always, but it does happen. Adding destroy, let me see here. Some rules let you add units. Okay, there'll be the med pack, for example. You can't grow more than the starting strength, which is fine. Lose wounds, destroyed. Okay, for example. Okay, this is just, again, it's all clarifying stuff. It's saying if you've got mixed move characteristics like Lord Solar and the dudes he's attached to, they can only move as far as what they can move, yeah. Nice. Yeah, they have to move within the respect of their own. Eligible fight but not able to fight. Oh man, I'm not going to read this because this is when it gets into all of the really nuanced stuff. Now, here is what I was looking for before, is mixed keywords and units because, okay, so this is where I was talking about Cadian Shock. Give the regiment keyword to the Cadian command squad. My question was if the Cadian Shock die, we know the Cadian command squad retains their ability to be sticky objectives. What I don't know is if they carry the regiment keyword, which I'm pretty sure they don't. Let's see if there's anything here. So some units may contain models with different keywords, either because they're attached or as auto separation listed on the data sheet and the war gear they have. While this is the case, such unit has all the keywords of all the models, but it already removed it. Attacks target units, not models. Okay. This is not explicitly, but I'm 99.99% sure that it's the same. Yeah. So if the Cadian Shock die, the 10 dudes, and the Cadian command squad is by itself, they don't have the regiment keyword, which means they can't receive an order. Yeah, I'm 99% sure it's going to be no different. Now, this I've seen actually already. Someone's been a bit negative about this one. Is that it's saying okay, objectives not within a terrain area. If a location point objective does not coincide with a terrain area, you must denote the location objective with a flat circular marker, 40 millimeters in diameter, centered on that point. This is called objective marker. Models can move through objective markers. So this ironically is basically what we have with the little circle things, yeah? So it's saying if you've got an objective which isn't a terrain area objective, you can use just the round thing. So it could just end up that way. You just play games with the round crappy markers, but let's hope people don't. It's a bit dull. Okay, revive. So again, if you've got a med pack, stuff brings it back is that you can't go in the starting strength. you come back with everything. If, let's say, you killed a dude with an enhancement, if you can do that, which we can now actually, they come back with that with their 4 runes remaining. Models returned to the battlefield must be set up as follow: incoherency, and can be engaged with 1 or more units, but only if, okay, right. So I believe this was already the case, but again, it's nice to sort of clarify this, is that if you're counting command squads in combat with someone else, they can the medpack guy can heal back models, and they can be with engagement range of the unit that the unit's already engagement range with. You can't do it with another unit, for example. So it's always good to know. Again, if you've got a super aggressive combat army you're playing into, when they try and bring back dudes and tag someone else who isn't engaged by them, they can't do that. Okay, something right. A leader or support and attached unit is destroyed. Okay, that's interesting. Leader or support can be attached. It's destroyed. We'll see, because again, it's all stupid. Now they've already got FAQs, and like I always find it funny that over the course of an edition, they get so many FAQs tightening everything up that already got FAQs. So if a unit has no range weapons eligible to shoot, and it can use a unit with no. Yes. Okay. So if you don't have a ranged weapon, you can make a shooting attack. Okay, fine. But that's okay. So it's basically actions, yeah. So you can perform an action if you don't have a pistol. When my unit shoots using close quarter, model can target engage unit blast weapons. No, we knew that. When the unit shoots an engaged monster vehicle unit, can models in my unit what? When my unit shoots an engaged. Okay, so again, this is no different to what we knew, but I think because they're trying to make sure no one gets any weird ideas, is that, again, there's no big guns never tire. You've got close quarter weapons, which is basically pistols, and then it clearly states vehicles can shoot non-blast weapons into stuff around it. It can shoot, or it could shoot, or it can shoot something else in a different combat. But if it shoot, but it can only shoot into another vehicle. But if that vehicle is in combat with somebody else, it can't shoot a blast weapon into the vehicle. So nothing's changed. That's the takeaway, I believe. I hope so. Right, you've then got, can a unit that's eligible to make an overrun fight? There's something to say. Eligible to fight? No. Okay, so again, overrun is a scenario where 2 units charge 5 rattling snipers. One of them, it kills them. That unit can then pile in 3 inches, called an overrun into somebody else. Now, this is saying that if somehow, I don't even know how this would happen, is that if they both charge that unit and that unit just disappeared for some reason, he then couldn't do it. But I can't think of scenarios that do this. But again, it's good they've got this detail here. Because it says, so no, sometimes unit can become engaged after the start of the fight step, but then become unengaged later step if there's no. Yeah, I mean, this is probably a niche scenario, but it's good it's there. Okay, so can a unit embark within transport after making a scout move? No, scout moves happen and resolve. Okay, I've never ever seen anyone try to do that, but this is helpful just to clarify, yeah. After making it's the could you scout move into a transport, but I've never seen that before. But again, they're already getting some FAQs. So I just want to go back to the charge rule, because with the 8-inch deep strike or ingress or strat reserves, when they're going to call it now, I do have questions. But this is obviously take a while. Thanks to those who've stuck with me. I appreciate you listening to all my ramble as I go through this. This has been very beneficial for me, hopefully you as well. To read through this, because there is, and this is the point, is having been through 8th to 9th, 9th to 10th, 10th to 11th, is that the game is overall the same. Yeah, you still roll dice, you still have your rounds, you turn, you still shoot, you still fight, you still have a tape measure, God forbid, if we ever lost that. But it's all the little intricacies which have obviously changed. General observation on this is, I'm trying to find the fucking charge phase here. Here we go. We'll come back to this. Is that they're doing a really good job of tightening everything up, so keeping things quite concise. Well, I think I'm loving this 11.202, and it's all just like finicky shit. But this will make a big difference when you're trying to in game, you're trying to like work out where everything is, and you go to one part of the rules that says refer to that. If it says 11.01, you just find that. So you can see that they've put a lot of thought into organizing everything. And let me just work out this, because right, so if you can deep strike within 8, I know that you have to still roll a 9 to make the charge. But why is that? Because I want to make sure I'm clear on this. And if you know and you're in the chat, please tell me, because this will save me babbling through this. Make a charge roll. Make a charge roll, still make a charge. Otherwise, end a charge. Right, fail charges. Note that in the absence of all modifiers to the charge roll, a result of 2, a double 1, is never sufficient for him to complete a charge move, as a unit cannot be within engagement range 2 inches when it attempts a charge. Such a roll, therefore, always fails. So now I can't find exactly, and I'm going to disappoint myself in you, is that I know from other people that given you can deep strike or a rifle strap reserves within no more than 8, or a max closeness of 8 inches, you still got to roll a 9-inch charge, is what I've been told. I'm 100% confident that's correct. I'd love to know where that is in here, but the main thing is that you can't basically come in from reserves and do an 8-inch charge. You've got to do a 9-inch charge. So that's what I wanted to get to, but I can't find it. So, right, so this has been a lot to read. The thing, as I said before, is that this is still a very important but only part of the overall rule set for us to know where everything will patter out, yeah? Until we see the chapter approved, whatever they call the tournament pack, if you're playing tournaments, the new index for Guard, the points as well, you're not going to get a complete picture of how 11th edition is going to feel, yeah? Because 10th has been very balanced, and as I said before, is that I assume 11th will be very balanced as well, because in the year 2026, there's so much data out there now. You've got AI coming up and doing all types of wizardry things in the back end. But crucially, there's so much tracking of 40K now that you could probably imagine GW making changes quite quickly in the first 2 or 3 months even, once I've got a good amount of data to show where things are going. Yeah, because let's pretend they work out that suddenly the way they've engineered the charge, the pile in, the consolidate, the overrun ability, that type of thing, is suddenly way too powerful for whatever reason. They have to go and make a change, which could basically bring it back in line. So that's something I want to make quite clear, is that do not jump to conclusions yet. That Guard is going to be good, bad, or ugly, because we just don't have enough information, yeah? We do know with absolute confidence indirect will be way less better than it was. As you said, if nothing can see the target hitting on a 6, you can't reroll any hits in indirect, full stop, no ifs or buts of any units in the game as it currently stands. If one of your units can see the target, you can hit them on a 4, 5, or 6. Yeah, so that could be, and that's just going to be line of sight. Yeah, so if your opponent's a bit sloppy with deployment, and all you're going to do is put a scout sentinel to see a target with its scout move and its move, and it's in the back of your opponent's deployment zone, they basically can be hit. Now, that being said, we know hidden is a thing as well, and it is quite clear here that it's got to be infantry, beast, or swarm in a terrain area thing that's got dense terrain pieces. Every single model must be in that terrain piece to be hidden. Yeah. Now, that obviously means they can't be hit by indirect, but also don't ever let your opponent forget, or yourself, is that if you've got a massive brick of guys and one guy isn't within the terrain feature, that means that unit is not -1 to hit or hidden. Yeah. So you can go through it and just make sure this is all quite clear. But like, I'm not clear what it'll do for Guard, because I've only, I played, as I said before, I played a game against Heretic Dave, great YouTube channel, to do a battle report. We played 10.5 or close to 11th edition. Is that the hidden rule didn't really come up that much. But what did come up, which I've observed as well, is that my very early bet is anything which ignores cover is going to be very, very good. Because if you ignores cover with even AP1, that means you're hitting normally and you're giving your opponent an actual AP1 save, yeah? Because currently, if you've got cover, they hit you normally, but then you get it, you basically AP1 becomes AP none, and that obviously means for Regal Dawn tanks, Leman Russ battle tanks, and also Bane Blades. In 10th edition, you get hit by a Melter, you've got a 5-up save, but in 11th, you've got a 6-up save. And there's nothing in the core rules which talks about improving armor saves. You may get it through stratagems, but they're probably going to be quite rare. And given you can only use one stratagem per phase per unit, you won't be able to double stack into things. So again, nothing, the game is still the same thing. Overall, there's some subtle and important changes here and there. Things like Overwatch, it's done at the end of the turn. There's no rerolls whatsoever. You can Overwatch a unit which hasn't moved, and you do it at the very end of the turn. Yes, there's no more like, you move something, do you want to Overwatch? You move something, do you want to Overwatch now? So it's all, you just move everything, then your opponent decides, yeah. But I think the good one for Guard is, again, if you've got the juicy flamers on a unit, you can basically Overwatch into a unit which hasn't moved. So let's just check quickly, and apologies clicking it backwards, but I just want to check if they've got the stipulation Overwatch about Titanic units, because if you can Overwatch with a Bane Blade or its sisters and brothers, and it can shoot something which hasn't moved, that's going to be amazing. So let's, you can't do it with Titanic. Okay, never mind. But the main, again, being serious here, is that you can Overwatch now into something which hasn't moved, and it's called snap shooting. Yeah, so snap shooting is the rule ability that allows you to fight Overwatch. But look, anyway, so that's probably enough of this. Hopefully you've enjoyed this as I've rambled my way through it, either been listening to me live. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll read the comments now. Or also you're going to watch back the recording. But super exciting. It's great. 11th edition is here. It is always a bit of a weird phase. It's like you want to start playing the game, but you can't use the app to build your list and the new thing. We still haven't seen the full thing about detachment points, how that's going to work. It's like, is Grizzled going to be 3? I assume it will be 3 detachment points. Is Recon going to be 2? I don't think so. But it's good to start to get a feel of what we're coming into. But as I said before, until we've seen the detachment point structure thingy, the chapter approved for the actual missions, how they all lay out, the indexes, all the points, we're not going to know for probably about 3, maybe 4 months, weeks, that what Guard feels like truly in the new edition. But look, there are some key stuff in here. Make sure you download the PDF. It's all available on the Warhammer community website. It's the first document of 11th edition. There's a lot of detail here, a lot of new language to clarify things. But as always, I think the more clarity they give you, the better, yeah? Because, if you're playing with your friend at a local hobby shop or just around the kitchen table at a big sweaty tournament, you want to have clarity in rules to avoid any of that sort of weird conversation. So let's read some of the final comments. Nice of you to join us, everybody. So, yeah, okay. So I had the question about the charges, is that it's basically, SJB said, with charges, I think it's because you measured base to base, and your 8 inches was therefore a 9 inch to get into base contact. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then another person said, Death Strike finally going to see some use against hidden units, jokingly. Now, interestingly on the Death Strike, now the reason why I'm saying this is because the Death Strike is not an indirect weapon. So it's a really good observation. I did notice this previously, is that the Death Strike, it's, I don't know if we can find it on Wikipedia, but I wonder if you can even see this as I'm changing my things. Oh, you probably can't actually. But I'm going to pull it up in the back end, is the Death Strike is not a indirect weapon. Let me get this up. You can't see it. I'm looking. I'm on a different window here. But yeah, the Death Strike is blast, 1 shot, plasma warheads got a specific rule, 2d6 hitting on 2s, that's 16-4 AP1. 16 AP4 1 damage. So it's profiles like mediocre. And basically with a plasma warhead is you pick a point, and then anything within 6 of the marker is hit by this. Now, the reason why you're speaking about this, and it's a good question you've posed, is that it's not an indirect weapon. Yeah, so because it's not indirect. Now let's think about this. Because it's not indirect, but it can't see the target. So it should, in theory, be hitting normally because it's not indirect. But the question on hidden is what I'm not sure about. Now, it's a really interesting one. I painted it at the back end of 9th edition, and then basically 10th edition came out, and I was like, no, because they're decent in 9th, and then they died in 10th. But good one, and the key thing is the Death Strike missile is not indirect. So therefore, it should be hitting things on 2s, and it could be reroll because it's not an indirect weapon. So we'll see how we go. All closed back. Oh man, thank you. Another super chat. Thank you so much. No need for apologies. It's good to see you back. Thanks so much for joining. Yeah, and any final questions from anybody out there? Because I've enjoyed just going through this with you. It's been nice to see some of you out there listening and contributing where possible, helping with the questions. But hopefully interesting. As I said, let's keep this positive. It is super positive. We're in the beginning of a new edition of 11th edition of Warhammer 40,000. New rules. As I said, everything's broadly the same. Some subtle changes here and there, or major changes here and there. But we've got to see until the new indexes come out, the attachment points, all that type of thing, the chapter approved, before we can take a big sort of view on this. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you everyone for joining me, those who did live, those who are going to watch back the super long live stream as well. Join me again for more videos like this. Thanks so much to the super chats from those lovely people who've done so. I really appreciate your generosity. And yeah. So if you enjoyed this one, what we can do is with a like, comment, or by subscribing. Joining my Patreon platoon or becoming a channel member, you get access to my small but quite active little Discord server with a bunch of really lovely people. And the main thing is I just appreciate the support you give to me financially. It really keeps me motivated to do so. So thanks everyone for joining. Good to see all those. And I'll see you next time. All the best.